Hey everyone, and welcome back to our DC Films podcast. This is episode 12. Where this week, all we're going to be discussing is we're just going to be celebrating the women and all of them and the DCEU. And I've been looking forward to this for a while because obviously I think some of the most important characters in the DCEU are its female characters. And I can't wait to delve into this further. So joining me are, again, some of the awesome people who've been here for a while now. So if you guys want to each go around and kind of reintroduce yourselves, if you will.
Hey everyone, my name is Artem, and you can find me as Grey Kung Lao on Tumblr.
I'm a Social Justice League on Tumblr.
Hey, I'm Lily from Lily Loves Comics on Tumblr.
Hi, I'm Fatma, and I'm Stay Awesome Gotham on Tumblr.
And I am Katie, and I am Story Advocate on Tumblr.
And thanks again, you guys, for joining me. I'm glad we were able to get everyone together today. I know everyone's schedule's lately been a little hectic, so...
Just a little.
Yeah, so just to kind of start things off, for me, watching, the DCEU films, of course, I've already grown attached to these characters just from being, a DC fan in the past, but I didn't necessarily think that these characters, not even just the female one, just any of the characters would resonate with me so much as they have. And I love that, from film to film, you get these strong, and also independent and intelligent women who can stand on their own in these films and aren't necessarily reliant on the men to do these things and to be as great characters as they are. And I think a lot of that comes from Zack's influence and what he started with Man of Steel, and especially with Lois Lane's character, and even to an extent Martha Kent's character. I love what he's been able to do. So if everyone wants to go around their overall thoughts on how the females of the DCEU have been portrayed so far.
Well, my favorite part about female characters in DCEU probably was Lara L in Man of Steel. I just, you don't spend much time with Clark's biological parents in general, and it was really nice to see that we had more than 5 minutes with his biological parents, and it was so touching to see Lara as such a loving and caring mother to Kal-El. And
yeah,
of course,
really see.
No, you continue.
We really see a connection between the two of them. In a way that, is the most that we can really establish a connection between these two characters. But I was just saying in the chat, Goodbye My Son on the Man of Steel soundtrack is an instant cry for me. And I think that is something that they use to really establish her connection with Clark in a way that I think other movies kind of miss. And I think that she does get some development that I think that she's usually kind of shoved off to the side. I would have liked to see more of her. I think we've kind of, we've passed that threshold, so we're probably not going to invite that actress back. Mm-hmm. But what we did see was, I agree, super, 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 solid. And the actress is also just stunningly gorgeous.
Mm-hmm. Oh yes. I think one of the things that I liked best, even the first time I saw Man of Steel, I was struck by the fact that I don't know. I agree. They gave her as much development as they possibly could, which was actually quite a lot. It was impressive to me that she loved her son so much. Of course, they both do, but at the same time, while Zod and Jor-El are going at it, she's the one setting up the pod to go. She's the one, arranging everything. She's the one getting it set. And then, of course, the moment when Zod tells her to stop, and they all just sit there, the stillness is just beautiful because Jor-El doesn't argue and, oh no, you don't listen to him, and, all that kind of thing. He just waits. He just holds Zod and looks at her and waits because he knows that she's going to make a decision and he trusts her to do it. And it was just, I don't know, it was really a beautiful thing because they could have easily just mowed over the top of Laura and done it a different way. And that moment right there really established for me her strength and her ability to be a full-rounded character and just quote, Kal-El's mother and Jor-El's wife. She is her own person. And I love how much they gave her. She was a wonderful character for me.
And you also got to like how Jor-El constantly brings her up every time he speaks with Kal-El.
Yes.
It's like he's establishing that everything that was done for Clark on Krypton, it was both of his parents were participating in these decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well,
very
I mean,
much.
they commit an act of treason and heresy together to their whole. I mean, they have to make this decision, together. Like that's the important thing about having a natural birth and doing all of those things that have, if not like very social stigma against, probably outlawed. I think involving that and making that a decision is a really cool reproductive rights thing. It's a really cool thing where they both really choose this over Laura just being like, wow, Jor-El is really nuts and wants to put our kid in a rocket and shoot him off into space. Hopefully the planet ends because, if not, we've just done something really dumb.
Yeah. I just loved her entire line when she's holding him. She said, I thought I could, but now that he's here, I don't know if I can do it. And that completely resonates with me because it's one thing when they're kind of on the inside and there's that vague future of, this might happen or this will probably come to pass, but I'm not going to think about that right now. And then when they actually arrive and you're actually holding them, then suddenly everything is different. And it everything about the way you see the world, experience the world, and want the world to be is different once you hold your child in your arms. And that is just, they did such a good job because it's heartbreaking. It's just terrible. But at the same time, it's necessary, It's like he either stays here and dies with us, or we take this chance and hope that he makes it. And then something, it's got to be better than him just dying here. And so it's just, what a heartbreaking choice. They did such a wonderful job with it, and it was so beautiful. She did a wonderful job as a mother. That really struck me.
And she was also really fearless in front of Zod.
Yeah.
When he
Gotta
asked
admire
her,
that.
where you send your son, she's like, he is beyond your reach. And when he throws his threats on her before sending him to Phantom Zone, she's like, she doesn't care, you're not scary to me. And it was really good to see on her side.
Yeah. That was so badass.
Oh god, it really was. And that's why I think this, obviously I love Man of Steel to death, so this isn't surprising necessarily, but I think this is my favorite version of the origin story because, again, we see a lot more of Laura's side of things, and it's not, again, she's not there just to be Clark's mom and to be Jor-El's wife, like you guys already said. For me, it's I can look at the previous incarnations, like in Smallville, I feel like they fleshed out Laura pretty well in Smallville, considering they brought her back as a clone thing and a little more of the flashback, so they already fleshed her out more in a TV show. But kind of going back to the Reed era films, she was just kind of there. I mean, she was fine, but the character, for the most part, has always just kind of been there and played the same role more or less. But in Man of Steel, I feel like it was the first time we got to see, the Clark's biological mom. We got to see a little bit of kind of who she is and why she's willing to make this decision to save the life of her child. And we can see that, again, it's not easy for her. Again, it's once she finally holds her child in her arms, she's like, oh my god, I can't give my child up, he just got here. And in fact, and the awesome thing too is the fact that they throw in that bit of it's the first natural birth in centuries, and they are committing an act of treason, that you guys are right that it's a mutual decision her and Jor-El made together to do this, and that to me that just shows how important she is and how important their relationship is kind of to who Clark is. The fact that they were able to do this together in a world where they knew it was dying, but they wanted to take this chance to kind of save their race and save their son. So for me, I just think I can't pronounce the actress's name off the top of my head. It's because she's an Israeli actress. I think it's Ayelet Zur. I'm totally butchering her name, but I think she did an amazing job in the film. And Oddly enough, the funny thing, originally, Connie Nielsen, who plays Hippolyta in Wonder Woman, she was one of the actors up for the role as well.
Really?
Oh, no kidding. That's awesome.
Yeah. So,
Interesting.
I was just thinking, she'd make a great Amazon. I'd totally love to see Laura, like, resurrected.
Oh, God,
just
I know.
hanging out with the Amazon.
That would be awesome.
I know. And that's what they also, like, to kind of go ahead towards Hippolyta. I think just, like the female characters, like, in terms of, like the mothers of these characters are also strong characters from what we've seen in the DCEU, and that even with, like, the little bit we've got from Martha Wayne in Batman vs. Superman, we see that her role in Bruce's life and this particular incarnation is, like, she plays, even though it's very, very subtle, it's super impactful to Bruce and his psyche and who he becomes later on in life. That's why obviously that Martha scene has become so important, because of the way where Bruce sees his mother and what she was trying to do in that scene in the alley. That she wasn't just trying to stand there; like, she got out in front of the gun to protect her son. Which, in past incarnations, she hadn't necessarily done that sort of thing. So the fact that, like, with the Trinity, you see, like, their mothers, you're playing a pivotal role in kind of who these heroes ultimately grow up to be, and I absolutely love that.
Agreed. And
Yeah,
I will
me
say,
too.
there's less on Wonder Woman's side because we really only know her mom and just little bits of Zeus. But in terms of Bruce and Clark, like, the emphasis on their parents and the effects that they've had on them is actually really cool, because very often in fiction you get an emphasis on one character or another. It's like he's just like his father, or he's just like his, and you really kind of, you blow off the other parent, and typically it ends up being the mom. And so it's really cool to see the when they give you as much as they can on their parents, and you start to realize that both of them have contributed almost equally to the creation of this character. Like Bruce, we get a lot of emphasis on his mother. Obviously, she was a huge part of his life and should have been, and is one of the things that hit him hardest the most in losing. And yet at the same time, you get the kind of curled black glove of his father as he gets angry and then goes to do something about it, and that is also so Bruce, it's like,
right.
And so you can see the equal contribution that they both have towards their son and who he ends up being. And then with Clark, it's exactly the same way, or I should say with Cal, because when you look at his birth parents, I mean, you get Jor-El jumping off to stuff and, going to battle and being a warrior, and yet he's incredibly intelligent, and he's very obviously Kal-El's father. It's like, oh yeah, they're related. You can see that. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, then you look at Laura, and she is extremely strong, but also very gentle, very kind, very loving. That's also Clark, or that's also Cal. So you can see again that they have both contributed equally to who their sons ended up being. And that is just delightful to me, because very often we get emphasis on only one parent and they kind of shunt the other one off to the side. And so it was really cool to see both of them that way.
Agreed.
And that's why, like, even like I'm going from Lara to even Martha, just like, I love the emphasis on the parents in these films, because I feel like more often than not, like, we see, like, in other superhero films, like, yeah, like the parents have somewhat of an impact, but I don't think, like, the impact is nearly as big as it is in the DCEU, because, like, we see Clark, like, several times going to Martha or even Jor-El for guidance in these films, and showing that, like, he, like, at the end of the day, he's kind of almost like not like a scared little, but he's almost like a little kid just trying to figure out what he's trying to do with his life, and he's like, he wants to make sure that what he's doing is the right thing, so he keeps going back to Jor-El or even Martha, or even like talking to the ghost of Jonathan in Batman vs. Superman, and that he still very much so relies on his parents' input in what he's doing. Like, he wants to make sure he's doing right by the world, but also doing right by them.
That's so relatable, man.
No, and it really is too, and it makes, that's why I think it makes even like the Kents a lot more relatable in that way. And we've already kind of discussed it, like, and how in this particular iteration, some people haven't loved it because of the way that they show that the Kents are flawed. They're not perfect. They're not necessarily, they don't know exactly what to do with an alien baby, but they're kind of like what they say, that they're kind of making it up as they go along, and that, again, we haven't really looked at like that sort of story point in other incarnations, because they've always been like, all the parents kind of, like, they already kind of know how to deal with the baby, and it kind of, it's not that big of a deal, but, like, in the DCU, like, they're struggling, and it's not easy for them to raise this, this child from another planet and take it in as their own, and kind of, like, shape him into being someone who obviously has to hide his powers, but they know one day he's going to have to share himself with the world. And that's kind of like a big burden to bear on a couple of people who, up until then, they were struggling to have a child, and then this child with amazing abilities and who's obviously not of this world shows up on their doorstep. And for them, it's like they take this responsibility on them, and they ultimately shape, like, honestly, that's why I think, like, without the Kens, and obviously Jor-El and Lara have a huge influence, but without the Kens, like, Clark wouldn't be who he is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, like, if you see, like, in other incarnations, whether it's, like, the Red Sun storyline or whatever, like, you throw, like, Clark into different, into different circumstances, he's not the Superman that we've come to know and love because he doesn't have the influence of the Kents. And that's why I think his parental influence, whether we've seen it a billion times or not, is important to who Superman is.
Oh, yes.
Definitely.
Oh, yes.
And I think Zach has painted that beautifully, and that, like, as a grown man, like, Clark can go back to just when he's late night struggling with what he's doing. He just calls mom at like 3 o'clock in the morning and just be like, and asking her, just like, how come dad never left Kansas? And in that moment, she's just like very comforting and very just like, she's like, oh, Clark, like it was never like that. Something, like.
That particular cut from the theatrical breaks my goddamn heart.
Oh God, me
it
too.
breaks my heart. I think that it's one of the worst mistakes that they made because Man of Steel was so much about masculinity and figuring out sort of what a postmodernly masculine Superman looked like, and I loved that, and I thought that was so valuable. And then you literally, like, you never have a superhero just call his mom. You never have, like, that would just never ever happen. Like, it's something that seems so miraculous the moment it happened. Like, I spent the whole time with my hand like clamped over my mouth watching the Ultimate Edition, just being like, holy crap, this is actually happening. This little tiny baby has called his mom for reassurance, and I think that's so powerful. And I mean, like, I talk a lot about superheroes crying and having male superheroes with a full spectrum of emotion, and I think that contributes like a 1,000 points in Clark's category to just being like, hey, like, I need to hear mom, and I need to access that wisdom, and I need to do it right now, even though I'm sure she's like fast asleep.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter. See, that's the beautiful thing. He calls her, she's like, what's wrong? What's the matter? Like, she's instantly awake, That is so a mother. He's like, nothing, I just want to talk, I love it so much. And I think, I don't know, especially the subtext of that scene is so beautiful. Like, if people, I don't know, if people want to cry about the symbolism being beat you over the head in Man of Steel, and yet at the same time, they're missing some of the subtle nuances. Like, that scene, it could have easily been, I don't know what to do, Mom. I'm trying my best, and the world doesn't accept me. I mean, they could just spell that right out, spoon feed it to you. And instead, it's, why didn't Dad ever leave Kansas? Mm-hmm. And so you have to look at the subtext of the conversation. What is he talking about? Why is he suddenly asking that when he's asking, when he's upset about how he's trying to help and the world doesn't seem to get it? How exactly does this transfer? And again, it's, why did he never leave Kansas? Why didn't he ever leave the place that he was in? And she's like, because that's his home, basically. The subtext is his home. Why would I go anywhere else? This is where I live. And it's pretty much the same for him. You can get up and leave Earth, Clark, if you want to, but this is your home. Always has been. Are you going to stay and duke it out and handle the floods and the famine and the problem that come with farming? Or are you just going to say, I'm done with this? And
I think
and
he
then
also,
she says, he says it's never simple. She says, I wish it was simple. She says it was never simple. I don't have answers, and I mean, it's not perfect, but she gives him that point of view that there is no simple answer to this. And in the end, you just have to do, what you feel is right. Sorry, go ahead.
I think that conversation is very much about him measuring his own ambition, and I found that really relatable. This idea that like I've overreached my parents. His father definitely wanted to do good things for the world, and did so in a very like his corner of the earth way. And I think that that's him just going like, maybe I need to scale down. Like, maybe I've made a mistake trying to go global with this, trying to really just, allow myself all of that scope. And I think that Martha's answer is really beautiful, because it's just like, oh honey, like no matter how much of the pie you cut off, it's still going to be really hard. It's still going to be really difficult. And, I'm basically saying like, nothing about your dad's life was simple. And that's just a human truth. That's just being a person.
Yep.
It's always hard. It's never going to be, as simple, and probably saying in a way it's never as easy as Jonathan made it look.
Yeah. Well, and also the idea that whatever choice you make, there's consequences for that. There's going to be fallout for that. It doesn't matter, what choice it is. Go global, go just with the United States, do whatever you feel is right, but there's still going to be consequences for that. Right now, the United States is cranky because you want to go world, but if you just scale down and go world, the rest of the world is like, and go United States, then the rest of the world is like, oh, that's nice. And so, like, it really doesn't matter. Whatever choice you make, you're going to have consequences. It's never simple. It's never cut and dry. So you just have to do it. So you're right, though. I love your perspective on that conversation.
I mean, I'm super obsessed with that conversation. Martha Kent is like religious for me. Like,
she is so wonderful. Can we talk about Martha Kent now?
Oh,
how awesome she is!
Oh my lord! Especially in the DCEU, she's just so she's so salt of the earth, and she's so. I think that there's an impulse to make Martha much softer than I think she would be able to be. In her situation, I think that whenever I think of Martha, I think of the story that she told about sitting next to Clark's crib, listening to him wheeze through the night, and it's always just like that resonates so clearly, like that real, like, her fear makes a lot more sense to me in a really immediate way than Jonathan's does, because she's just like I'm not worried about other people so much as I'm just worried about him getting through this. Like, is he even just going to live through the night?
Yep. And that's a true mother. I don't know. I love their relationship so much. I love how much emphasis they put on it. Lois is the love of Clark's life, but his mother is still a huge part of it, and should be. It's not like he grew up with tons of a social circle, and he relies on her so much even now. One of my favorite scenes is just the whole homecoming scene of Man of Steel when he gets off the off the truck and comes up the driveway, and she's, I don't know, there's something about the way they're just so happy to see each other. This is normal, that he gives her that hug and lifts her off the ground, and they are so beautiful together because they are really just such a beautiful mother-son combination. They care for each other. They support each other. I remember seeing complaints about, well, how come he's not at home helping her with the farm? He should be doing that, not going off the world. People come up with the strangest things. And it's like the man 30, he's 30 years old. If he's still living at home, societally, we usually think that's a problem. So, you can't have it both ways here, guys, But it's like, very obvious that
visit your mother, Clark. Visit
your
mother.
It's obvious supports him going off and doing what he does and searching and looking and finding himself, so to speak. But he's always got that home base to come home to.
Yeah.
And when he does, and he comes home and touches the home base, there she is. And I don't know. It's such a beautiful thing, because I agree, especially with superheroes, but even in life nowadays, we don't usually get that depicted, especially for a male. You know,
Yeah.
like girls can go home and talk with mom all day long, but guys doing it, grown guys going home and talking with their mothers, you know, that's, I don't know. It's too feminine, it seems, in society's perspective, which is just plain ridiculous. Because I'm sorry, people need their parents. It doesn't matter what sex you are. So but I love that scene, and I love the whole scene about how, like, he says, "I found my people," and she's like, "I'm so happy for you," and she
That was really heartbreaking,
is.
too.
She totally is. But there's a little bit of something there, and he's like, he can find it immediately. Okay, what? You know, it's a beautiful scene to me because, I don't know, it's just they know each other so well. They know each other inside and out. They're always there for each other. And he's not just going to gloss over that and go, okay, she's happy for me, but there's something else. But I'm not going to go ahead and approach that. I'm just going to ignore that and be, you know, a tough man who doesn't talk about feelings. It's like, oh, wait, no, mom's got problems. What's up, mom? You know, and then he lets her talk about it. I mean, that's a healthy relationship. That's a beautiful relationship.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's like you said, he's not like completely disregarding her feelings just because he found out who he really was. Like, that's why you're right. Like, at the end of the day, he still came home and, like, she's still his mother. You know, she's the one who raised him. She's the one who's always been there and always will be there. So for me, like watching that scene, every time I see it, it is a little heartbreaking because, like, you see Clark's like so excited to find out who he really is, and when the way he words it, he's like I found them, my parents, my people. You can see it's for her. That's like, I mean, again, like I said, like of course she's happy, but of course at the same time she's like, you can see that little bit of worry of like, she might be worried about, you know, potentially losing Clark.
Yeah.
So, and like she doesn't know the full story of what's going on. She doesn't know that like his parents are really dead, and that like he talked to like a hologram of his father in this ship. Like she doesn't know any of the details. She just hears him say, "I found them. I found my parents." So for her, that's got to be a little heartbreaking as well, because like, well, at the same time, like she's his parent. So
Exactly. I think any adoptive relationship can completely understand that there is a fear. That's wonderful. That's great. I'm glad for you, but I do worry about how it's going to affect my relationship with you. You know, like,
Yeah.
You can't just take away all the years, you know, that I spent loving you and being your parent. You know, which he would never do. But it's a beautiful thing. It really is, and it's very true to life. It's very real. And I think that if they tried desperately to change it, just make it, I don't know, funny or glib or just a little bit trite, it would feel that way, you know. But this feels very, very realistic. That's a realistic response out of both of them.
yeah,
So.
I completely agree, and that's why like I think that whole scene to me just feels like a real genuine interaction between a mother and her son. Because one of the first things she says, she's like, "Oh, a reporter came by," and of course for them that could potentially go really bad if you know when you hear, "Oh, a reporter came by," but no, the way Clark's like, "Oh no, she's a friend, don't worry," and she's just like, "Oh."
Okay. I love it too, because she's like, time to go to war. Reporter came by. We got to batten down the hatches. We got to make sure we got to. Like, don't worry, it's a friend. Oh.
He's like, "Oh."
You know, friend.
And that's why he
You
did.
think so?
Yeah.
Oh my
The
gosh.
greatest,
Familiar, you know?
thing about that, I mean, the greatest thing about that is that it's almost a comedic beat. It's almost like, wait, a friend? What,
Exactly.
we do those?
Yeah.
Like, have those?
Wait a minute.
This is a new development. How do we do that?
That's why, and also to kind of segue into Lois. Oh, yo, go ahead, Fatma. You go ahead.
He had a friend though. The bullied him, and he saved him.
That's true. That's very true.
That was his friend, and apparently they didn't have to show it, but Lena, is her name Lena?
Lana?
Lana. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Apparently she was there too as a friend, and when he was working in the bar and helping people out. So I don't think the surprise comes from the fact that he has a friend. I think the surprise comes from the fact that he's at that age where he might be looking into relationships and settling down. Because I don't think he's that much of a loner. He is a great person who knows how to be friends with humans. And yeah, I think also to show that how awesome this movie was. I know we're going on a tangent and we're supposed to talk about the females, but that scene where Superman stands up for Lana at the bar, I think It is Lana at the bar, isn't it?
I think it's some random
not
girl who's
sure.
working at the bar because I think that's
Yeah.
like in Canada. I think because that's where he
Yes.
hears about the scout ship. Like, so I don't
Yes.
think it's Lana. I mean, they never said her real name, but
I believe her name is Chrissy.
oh, was it? Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Alright, well, that scene is really great as well because it just shows
Oh yeah, that's just I
how
love
much
that
he
scene.
values women. So I don't know. I think it was more to the surprise on her face. Maybe not. I mean, maybe we're just looking far too deep into it. But yeah, I love the dynamic that he has with his mum, and I love the dynamic that Bruce Wayne has with his mum. Because we're so used to so with the Dark Knight trilogy, we were battered down with Thomas Wayne and Bruce's relationship with Thomas, but not once did we see his mother. Not once did we even feel like his mother was
she was the
existing.
sweet blonde thing in the background who screamed and died, and that was it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. You know, like never again did she come back
Yeah.
or get brought up or have an influence.
Yeah, so
Sorry, go ahead.
I think, and again, I don't know whether we've mentioned this in a podcast before, but the way that Zack Snyder did it over the last two movies was, especially in Superman's case, is that he focused on the relationship with the fathers. So in Man of Steel, he focused on the relationship with John Kent and, you know, I can't believe I forgot his name.
Jor-El.
Yeah.
Blanked out. It's cool.
I've come back from work and I've been at the hospital, so it's like crazy stuff.
It happens.
And then in the second movie, obviously he's still got that relationship with Martha Kent. In Man of Steel, obviously he visits her and he has that deep relationship. And then they focus on the mothers in the second movie. And I know I hated how, I don't know, was it the Fine Brothers put the Martha scene as an annoying scene or try not to get angry as it, and that just really bothered me.
Oh yeah, I ignore them.
That Martha scene resonates so much with how they have a great relationship with their mothers, and that is a very, very rare thing to see across Hollywood in general.
Yes.
It's always downplayed. I mean, in reality, boys are always close to their mothers, and I don't want to be stereotypical because with me it's the opposite way. How, you know, girls are close to their fathers and boys are close to their mothers. But in reality, boys do talk to their mothers, they do hug their mothers, they do have a relationship with their mums. I don't know why it's not shown that much, and about what you guys are saying as well. The way that Zack Snyder did it was really, really great. And I don't understand why people always criticize him, saying that he hates his mother and he hates females and everything. Because not once in any of the movies did I see him in any way doing anything that degrades females. And even in the bathtub scene with Lois Lane, a lot of people saying, oh, why did he have to have her naked? In that bathtub scene, not once was it done in a gaze where, you know, the male gaze kind of thing.
Right.
It was done in a way to show the romantic side of her and Clark, but it was also done because she needed to think about things. And obviously after the ordeal that she had, that was really important to show that she is taking it seriously. And then, whereas on the opposite side, I don't get why you have the whole sexist criticism with Zack Snyder. With when Bruce Wayne was in the shower, good lord, that was a great scene. Don't get me wrong, I loved it. That was more male gaze than it was with her in the bathtub. Because that, you know, I don't know. Maybe I've just waffled on for too long. But yeah, I'll let anyone who wants to do a comment. Yeah.
No, I think you're absolutely right, and I think the strongest point that you're making there is the kind of the theme of Batman versus Superman is this sort of like the relationship with their mothers, and that's so affirming because, like, from a Freudian perspective, the whole process of manhood, the whole process of becoming a man is discarding the feminine, and the way that men are supposed to, in Freud's perspective, discard the feminine is by is by tossing aside their mothers, is by breaking away from their mothers, is by, in fact, like usually like growing some sort of weird disdain for their mothers, based on their relationship with femininity, based on their relationship with women in general. And it's extremely refreshing, and it says something about the relationship of the movie to female characters and women, that we just affirm those relationships. We just bring them back in. If anything, we strengthen those relationships, and putting those in a spot where they're really, really important. Was a big risk, and I think it was a risk that did hurt the film, but it was worth taking, and I think it's going to be extremely valuable in the long run. The more cultural capital these movies get, I think it's going to be super, super influential.
Yes, agreed.
Sorry to come back onto this, but I always, I believe this, that give it 10 years, and after the whole hoo-ha about the Martha Dean and all of the crap that comes around with Batman v Superman, it will be one of the movies where people will watch and say, wait, hang on, this is actually a great movie, why is it being treated like that? Just in the same way that Watchmen was treated well. I mean, I don't know. But then there is that, even with Bruce Wayne, you know, you're always used to Bruce Wayne on not wanting to have a family or starting. And I know this is a bit more comedic, but I loved how Alfred was just continuously trying to get him to start a family and find someone and have that kind of relationship as well. That was funny. I don't know. Yeah. I just that clicked with me with the whole family.
Yeah, it was
orientated side of the movie.
Yep. I agree that it's a good choice to make, and even if the film has suffered a little bit for it in terms of reception, I'm really grateful that Zach is that daring and that brave to go ahead and go, no, I want to do this. I'm not just going to go the classic Hollywood way because that's the way it's always been done, or because I know it'll get good reception. You know, I have way more respect for him going, no, it should be done this way, and I'm going to do it this way.
You know, since we were talking about Martha Kent, I wanted to say that my most favorite scene with her, and in general regarding Superman in DCEU, is him talking with her in Batman v Superman when he comes to reassure himself, and she tells him that, you know, you can be their guardian angel, you can be their monument, or you can be none of it. She doesn't force a choice for him. She tells him that he has a choice, but he has to make it himself, and she will respect his choice because he is her son. And I just like that she shows him that he has a free will regarding his decisions, and she's not going to make them for him, but she will respect what he will do. And it was really great to see in that movie.
Agreed.
I mean, that affirms so much what I've been saying all along about the Kents, is that we're looking at a model of parenting that we don't necessarily see a lot in media, but is a really beautiful and practical sort of parenting model, which is that their job, in their estimation, is to love and affirm Clark. And by modeling that behavior, by modeling that empathy toward Clark, they're teaching him empathy, they're teaching him thoughtfulness, they're teaching him how to be considerate of others just by modeling it. And I think that that's so much more powerful in terms of his development. And I think that half of the reason that Martha can trust Clark to make a decision that aligns with his morals, that aligns with, you know, the right thing to do in their estimation, is because he's the son she raised. And raised by just being consistently kind to him. And that being kind of an ethos for their parenting technique is really, really cool, because I think that we have a lot of weird toxic ideas about the way that the Kents have to police and control and clamp down on Clark, instead of, you know, every single person in the world has the capacity to be a terrible person and to be a serial killer, and to, like, every child in the world has that capacity. And, the approach that sometimes you just have to take is like, how would I like this child to treat the world? Maybe I should just be that considerate of this child.
Yep.
And I think an important thing too is that, like, a criticism that people have of the Kents and the overall view of Clark Kent and Jonathan and Martha, that, like, they're cynical and they're so, like, against the world. But, like, like, people keep thinking so highly of the Kents is like, oh, they're so perfect and they know exactly what to do. But when you throw them in these circumstances, like realistic circumstances of, like, these two parents, an alien baby shows up on their doorstep, they don't know what the hell they're doing. Like, when they find out, like Martha's, like, sitting there, like, listening to him breathe because he's struggling to adapt to our atmosphere. And then, not even just that, then as the years go on, you find out he has other abilities, and you're like, as parents, how would you even deal with that? I can't even imagine, like if I was dealing with that, I'd be afraid of, like, my kid accidentally killing me one day after throwing a temper tantrum. Like,
Yeah, right?
like, seriously, like the way they handled raising Clark, I think, especially in today's day and age, like, and people are so afraid of, like, the realism aspect. Like, people just want, like, see a superhero movie and forget the real world. But, like, the reason why it resonated with the DCEU so much is how it's placed. Obviously, it's not our world, but in a reality much like ours, where there are stakes and there are, like, people making realistic decisions. And in the Kents, you get these people who are just trying their best to, keep their son safe from himself and the world, and making sure that he knows that he's loved and appreciated. And as a parent, I think that's all you can really do, and I think they did a really damn good job.
They did.
Yeah.
They totally did. And I agree. They're putting this universe in a world that is more like ours really helps to kind of ground the idea that it wasn't just sunshine and daisies. I don't know, in the early days of the comics, it just seems like, and then this alien baby landed, and they picked him up and raised him, and everything was good, and it was always oh, what a happy surprise. He can fly, he's got laser vision, he's got super strength, how awesome, but never once did it really address the idea of, you've got this alien baby that you love and that you're doing your best to raise and help him deal with all of the things that come with these abilities that he's got, like the X-ray vision and the overstimulation and all of that craziness. And then you layer on the very real fear that the government will be knocking on your door any day and demand custody of that child, which really you don't have adoption papers for. You got no legal standing to be like, yeah, he's my kid,
Mm-hmm.
So, like, they could take him in a heartbeat and exploit him. Holy crap, the fear that comes with that. So so even when we were talking about Clark being social, yeah, he had friends, but I don't think he ever invited him over. I don't think it was ever, hey, let's hang out at my house.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think, because he always knew he was different, and they all had the fear that if it gets known, this is over.
Yeah.
And it could end really badly. So you put that real universe there, and you get a whole different spin on it. And of course they don't know what they're doing. Of course they're figuring it out as they go along. They're doing the best that they can do. And in the end, when you look at Batman v Superman, so is Clark. This is all unprecedented. This is all new. All he could do is what his parents did. Just keep going and figure it out as you go along. You're going to make mistakes, but at the same time, you're going to just have to go along and feel your way and hope that you're making the right choices. That's all any of us can do. That's a really relatable message, and I really appreciate that getting told to me instead of, look, here's this fabulous hero that you can never be that lives in a fabulous world where everything is wonderful and nothing ever goes wrong, and they have it great, and you live in Suckland. Have a good time. So it's like, I really appreciate that kind of message and that kind of grounding it in the real universe. I think that's a beautiful thing, and I need that, So, okay.
Well, and to contrast that with the puritanical relationship that we usually have with the Kents, the way that we treat their poorness as a virtue, the way that we treat their ignorance as a virtue, the way that a lot of writers really shove Christianity into the picture in a very overbearing way, where, like, basically the reason that Clark is a good person is because the Kents are good Christians, and that's the only way that that he could possibly be a good person, is like kind of the message that gets sent. This is really refreshing because we have a Jonathan Kent who hands Clark Aristotle, who, is inquisitive about the world, who goes, who goes to great lengths to try and unravel the mystery of this spaceship, so that he has a lot of information for Clark. And he believes in giving Clark information. He believes in dispensing that and giving him as much as he knows. And then being able to say, I don't know any more than that. I really, that's the limit of my knowledge, but it's not the limit of your knowledge, and you should find out more. That kind of intellectualism is usually not something that's embodied by the Kents. It's usually their ignorance and their simplicity is what makes Clark a good person. And I think that that's a really weird sort of strange concocted American ideal that doesn't have a lot to do with reality. Reality, we have to give Clark information. We have to not be afraid to, to extend the metaphor, to talk to our kids about sex, to let them know about the world, to, talk to white kids about their whiteness. All of that stuff is applicable to the pushback that the Kents have received for being complicated, for being interesting in this version, for being not ideal to a degree, to the measurement of certain people.
Yep. I think in a way it's an idealized idea that is dangerous, because I agree. Where on earth is their simplicity and their, I have no problem with them being poor and farmers and those kind of values, instilling stuff in Clark. You got to do work to get you got to plant the seeds if you want to see the plant. This makes good sense. But at the same time, you're right that they are living in this tiny protected bubble is not truly going to prepare him for any kind of work that he needs to do as a superhero, unless he lives in idealized bubble land, which is what happens a lot. And so, I agree. I think that's a dangerous thing that we have glommed onto, and I don't particularly appreciate it. So, I very much like Zach's approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too. And again, it shows that parents aren't perfect, and I think that's a great message to convey. Because in too many instances, I feel like the Kents have always been portrayed as these perfect people who know exactly what to do all the time, and we're always there for Clark when they need him. And that's not bad, but it's not realistic. And I think as a kid, when you're looking up to Superman and you kind of see where he came from, you're like, oh, he has these perfect parents who taught him everything he needed to know as Superman, and they always to me that's fine and whatever. But for me, it's the fact that the Kents are flawed, and there's a lot more to them. They're just trying to figure things out as they go along. That's how I would imagine every parent feels like. They're just trying to figure out what to do with they're doing the best they can, and they're not always going to make the best decisions. They're not always going to know what to do, but they're trying to instill the best values that they can in their kids. And I think as parents, it's all you can really do. And I think people just, especially with Superman, they complain when he's too perfect, but when him or his upbringing is flawed, then it's a problem. That's why I'm so frustrated with that criticism, because for years people have said, oh, Superman's too perfect and blah blah blah. Well, then you break down Superman into someone who's not perfect, and then everyone's like, oh, so everything's too cynical, everything's too grim dark and blah 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 and murderverse. And it's no, it's just that criticism's always bugged me, and it's because they want one thing, and then when they get it, they complain about it. So that's why I'm never taking fanboys seriously, because they never know what they actually want.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely
crazy.
Yeah. So to kind of informally segue. So we spent a little good time talking about her in one of the previous episodes, but Lois Lane and how she's been portrayed in this universe. Again, we'll have to spend as much on this, but because we already kind of went over it. But I'll just gonna reiterate some of the things I said previously, but I just love the way Zach has portrayed this version of Lois into being so intelligent and just so driven to get the truth, and also like once she finds out Clark's secret, is willing to keep it even though the world's being threatened. Like I can go all day about how much I love Amy Adams, and I'm not sure if everyone was here that day, but I love Amy Adams as Lois Lane, so I just want to throw that out there.
I love how much emphasis Lois Lane has gotten, and I admit, like going into Batman v Superman, I didn't really expect it because she got a lot of it in Man of Steel, and I figured, okay, they're moving on, they're gonna do Batman, Superman. Lois will probably be relegated to the back burner because that's what always happens. Like, so I've been conditioned to be like, oh, here we are again, all right, she'll get very little, we'll have a couple good scenes and that'll be it. And then suddenly I'm like, what the? She's the one she's actually chasing a story. They're showing her journalistic awesomeness. Oh, thank you. Oh, look at this. She's actually the one figuring things out when everybody else is being manipulated. Oh my gosh. Like, I was just amazed and impressed with how much we actually did get with her. Now, the extended edition, the Ultimate, has even more. But even in the theatrical edition, I was kind of amazed and impressed with how much presence she got in the film. And I was delighted to see that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just, for me, I love that, like, the Batman vs Superman kind of, like, almost, like, once you kind of get past, like, Bruce Wayne's perspective of, like, his origin story and all that, like, the movie more or less starts with Lois. And it kind of ends with Lois to an extent, So, her important, and I love how Zach has, shown that, like, she is important to this universe. Like, as Flash said, she is the key. Like, and she really is. Like, she's, like, obviously with Martha too, but, like, she's kind of what keeps Clark grounded, in a sense. Like, she is his tie to humanity. And obviously, like, I don't think that, like, if she died, we'd get, like, an Injustice storyline, even though that's kind of what, like, the Nightmare sequence was kind of entailing. But I do kind of want, like, I'm just really happy that Zach has shown that, like, these female characters, like, with, like, Lois, Martha, Lara, all these people, they do matter, and he's not just gonna, like, sideline them just because it was a team-up movie, or, like, a Batman and Superman movie. Because I've seen, like, like, when they did, like, the animated crossover thing between Batman and Superman back in the, I think it was, like, late 90s, when they had, like, the Batman versus Superman thing, when Bruce Timm was having his shows going on. Like, that, like, I was kind of expecting more or less that kind of story of, like, oh, like, Bruce Wayne's gonna try to, like, swoon Lois Lane, and then there's gonna be, like, jealousy between them, and then they're gonna find out each other's identities, and, like...
I was just thinking about that rumor and how hilarious it is in retrospect. Like,
I know, like, looking back on it,
that was a bona fide rumor that happened before Batman vs. Superman, was that this was going to be the plot, and the plot was going to be a giant love triangle, and, that I was going to probably die of shame in the theater.
I know.
Which is awesome. And it's just so funny in retrospect, because, I mean, like, as far as being an agent of action, I think, if you really measure it up, Lois is a greater agent of action in this story than Clark is, because Clark spends so much time being afraid to act and being kind of stuck in a holding pattern, and Lois never stops moving.
Yeah.
From the moment you put her on the ground, she's just running at full speed, which I think is really cool, because it's just so Lois.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is too, and that's why I love that in all of her moments in Batman vs Superman. I never once did I feel like, again, that she was being sidelined in any way. That felt like, because she was kind of ultimately what was kind of holding the story together. Like, she was the one who was, like, figuring out what Lex was really doing. Like, without her, about her investigation into Lex, I don't think Lex would have been, caught guilty of what he was doing. Like, and that's why when people complain about how, like, oh, like, Lois's plotline in Batman vs Superman was so pointless because, like, we already knew Lex is the bad guy. Yeah, we as an audience know because we see it in front of us. But in the universe, how are they supposed to know? It's not like they're watching this movie as we see it. Otherwise, the movie would have been over, like, a long time ago, and, like, Lex would have been arrested immediately. You know? So people like first of all, I don't think those people understand storytelling
They
at all.
don't
If they
think
just think,
logically sometimes.
Well, and I think that they, like, when I think about it, I think they've been conditioned, just like the rest of us, by Hollywood and everything that we've always gotten, that, okay, so now that love interest is going to get shunted to the side for the hero's, growth, because that's what always happens. So then they're watching it, and it's like, what the heck? Why is she on screen so much? And they're not spending time thinking about why would they do this. They're just going, okay, look, they spent way too much time with Lois Lane. That's just ridiculous. And I've seen that criticism a lot. And I do think that it's kind of their knee-jerk reaction to the conditioning that we've received. It's time for that to be over now. Move her off to the side. It's give her the pepper treatment. Shoo, shoo, over there you go. Come back when we need you. And so I think that people don't spend a whole lot of time thinking about why exactly am I having this reaction? Does it really bother me that her storyline was in there? Do I really think it was pointless? Or am I just so confused because it's not what I expected? I don't know. But I do think it happens to a lot of people, and I think that's a lot of what's gone on.
and also I think the problem comes from I think fanboys just expect their superheroes to be the leads and their superheroes to be the one to figure everything out when. And the fact that they complain about Lois Lane having such a big role and being able to figure that out, that's who Lois Lane is. And if you're having a movie with Lois Lane in it and she's not doing those things, then I don't think you're getting Lois Lane as a character right.
Yes, you've done it badly.
Well, we have this really frightening trend happening, and as a literature teacher, I've seen it firsthand, so I can at least vouch for that. We have this frightening trend happening where we actually have men being conditioned to not be able to actually treat female characters as a point of view character. So when Lois is doing these things, what you have to imagine is that a certain percentage of the male audience lacks a point of view character entirely because they can't find a way to treat Lois that way. And when they do that, then it pulls them out of the movie. And it's a flaw in the audience that needs to be overcome more than anything else. And it's a huge flaw. It's something that I think at least colleague wise, my fellow literature teachers have been really, really concerned with it, because narratives that center women are starting to just, they're apparently for 51% of the population, which is just not that's not the way they were designed. Every narrative is designed to be somewhat universal. And I think that half of the reason that this movie is lost on a lot of, at least male viewers specifically, is because they've been conditioned to disconnect when that female character is the point of view character, and we swap point of views in this movie. I mean, the movie is about swapping point of views, so we have to swap into Lois's point of view. And when we do that, I think that the reason they think that she's useless is because they literally cannot find a way to relate to her.
Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So much sense. That's really interesting. Well,
Yeah.
It's so
and then when you
messed
said
up.
that they have something that they can't identify with to a degree, with the way Clark is being treated, that we love, and making him a real person and not just a toxic masculine stereotype, they can't really identify with him either. So then they turn to Batman, but he's killing people and over the edge and going way into evil land. And so then they're like, that's not my Batman. And so they're not really connecting with anybody, which makes a lot of sense. And then they're like, wow, this movie sucks. So,
Except possibly in some cases, which has been the really scary feedback, Lex Luthor.
Oh, good gravy!
Oh my god.
Man.
Oy.
Well, that says a lot. Yep, that just confirms.
Yeah, it does, actually. That's crazy.
Yeah. It's funny they kind of bring that up, and I think that's why so many fanboys didn't like, I know this isn't DCEU related, but didn't like The Force Awakens because they couldn't get into a point of view of Rey, because Rey was kind of one of the central character of that movie. And when, of course, when they're a male fanboy and they can't relate to a female in any way whatsoever, they disconnect and this story's just too PC. They're trying to push an agenda, and I don't like it because I don't like following a woman's story because I'm a man. It's that's also partially your own fault. Like, I was able to follow Force Awakens story fine, and it was a woman. I'm not a woman. I can never really understand a woman's story, but I can follow along to the best of my ability, and if there's flaws in it, okay, whatever, but I'm going to do my best to follow along as the artist intended me to do.
That's awesome, Nick, because you know what? Women do that all the time.
Exactly.
It took me years before I realized I was naturally identifying with the man simply because that's what I was always given, so I just learned how to identify with them, which is fine, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then it was like, wait a minute, I also want to identify with these women. You know what? I like women. You know what? Let's have more women. Let me identify with those too. We should be able to identify with the human on the screen and not really worry so much about what sex they are.
Yeah. Well, and those male characters, those classic male characters get so much character development. Why wouldn't you identify with them primarily?
Yes.
Like,
you're right,
that's the thing, is that you have you have female characters to choose from, but, like, I don't know April O'Neil. I mean, if we're gonna be real, like, as a kid, like, I'm growing up watching this narrative, I don't know April very well. Like, I know Raphael. I spend a lot of time in Raphael's psyche. Raphael is complicated. April is there to facilitate things. And on that level, it's sort of like, I mean, like, I can't be blamed. I mean, you're gonna go for, I mean, hopefully, if you don't, you know, get negatively conditioned to not relate, you're going to go for the character who has the most nuance, because you have nuance, because you're a human being. And making, you know, those characters are more relatable, which is a great reason why we need to write female characters like the characters in the DCEU and have them be complicated and have them be relatable.
Yes, have them be real.
Since we were talking about Lois Lane, remember how Superman was watching news and there was this guy who said something along the lines that since we have Superman on Earth, do we as humans even matter now? And Lois Lane, in my opinion, is a great representation that humans still have their place in a world with superheroes, and they still can be heroes of their own by contributing in the best way that they are capable of. And in Lois' case, it's as a journalist, doing the best job you can as a journalist and exposing injustice, telling the truth. And as you said, it was all thanks to her that they were able to put Lex Luthor legally in prison. And that's what I like the most about Lois Lane, is that she represents that humans still can be superheroes in a world of caped characters.
Yes, and I have a great need for that, because so often, even if they love the human character, fans want them to get a superpower or get a suit or something so that they can also be relevant. And that frustrates me greatly, because I want to see them be a hero without that, without the powers, without the suit. There's nothing wrong with superheroes. I love the crap out of them. But I want to see regular, normal human people who might be kind of weak, like me, be heroes too. Because that is inspiring to me and to my kids and to the world. Like, that is what we really need. I want to see heroes that exist in all frames, not just the superpowered ones.
Well, and if you're really invested in the themes of Superman, and you're really invested in the way that the story works, that's a genuine function of the Superman story. It's supposed to be inspirational. It's supposed to galvanize the human race into great acts. That's the whole point. And I think that's something that Snyder gets that hasn't been adapted necessarily. I really do think that, and I think that that's not a slight to any live action Superman that's happened before, but I think that idea hasn't come across as clearly to me, and I think that if Zack hadn't done that with Man of Steel, I wouldn't be a Superman fan today. Like, that's how strong that is.
Yes, that is exactly how I feel as well. Totally agree.
I also like how Lois adapts really fast in DCEU. Like, when she's on Zod's ship, she doesn't seem strongly bothered by this fact.
Yeah.
when she faces Jor-El and he tells her that he has a plan to escape, she rolls along with it easily, and she handles a few Kryptonians herself. She pretty much saves Superman, and in that way she also saves the whole planet by this act.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and honestly, I read a review, just like a fan review on some blog somewhere. It was really minor, but right after Man of Steel, when I was kind of shocked that it was getting negative reviews, I'm like, I are confused. So I hit the internet, and and this one person spent like at least a page ranting about how stupid Lois was, about how she was so dumb that she stuck the key in the hole without knowing what it would do, and that this and that and the other, and that that she didn't recognize the danger in the in the Kryptonian robot when she took a picture of it and then got hit, and that she was just so stupid, and they were trying to make her be like that classic, which we've all seen, the heroine or the girl who's just so impetuous that she doesn't really think and just is constantly in danger for the hero to save. But I was honestly just kind of flabbergasted. It was like, really? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't. Okay,
like
you
if
don't
you switch out the word stupid for the word brave.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
I was kind of amazed. Well, and it's like, okay, so you're standing on a ship that you didn't be on. Now the aliens want you to. And you're standing next to the actual alien they want, and neither of you feels good about this, and you're completely threatened. And he turns to you and secretly hands you this little metal thing and goes, shh. Okay, so I'm thinking, you know what? Maybe you do turn to that when you find yourself alone and go, all right, this is either going to kill me or it's going to do something. Or it's kind of going to get me killed, or it's going to be a good thing because he gave it to me for a reason. Right there is when you have to decide, okay, am I going to be a chicken and just sit here and be too scared to do it? Or am I going to be brave enough to go, all right, whatever the consequences happen, but I'm going to try this and see what works. Like right there, that's not stupidity. That is making a decision. And sometimes in combat situations like that or dangerous situations like that, you have to make a decision like that. Sometimes it backfires on you. Sometimes it doesn't. And this time it definitely did not. But that doesn't make her stupid. That makes her, to me, incredibly brave, because I admit I think for years before I make decisions. I just don't know if I can make it. Not knowing what would happen, sticking that thing in there, does that alert everybody that I have it? Is that going to bring them running in here with guns? Is that, what I mean? I don't know what it does. So I'd spend all my time sitting there staring at it going, oh crap, because you can feel the weight of the decision you're about to make, and I don't want the bad consequences, so I would just sit there frozen and undecided and unable to move. That is not Lois Lane, and never has been. That's part of, I love her. So, I don't know. It just kind of amazed me. Stupid is not the word in my vocabulary for Lois, but brave, most
I mean, they consistently get so outraged by her audacity, and I'm like, it's her second character trait. I don't know what to tell you. If you don't like that she's audacious, then you don't like her, and that's fine. But, admit that you don't like her. It's not a flaw in the writing. It's literally just, I don't like Lois Lane. By extension, I'm probably not a Superman fan.
Extension, you may
and that's
not
okay.
Tend to have male traits as much either. Because men can be brave and audacious and, in your face and all over the place. They can be just like her, and that's a man. That's totally fine and acceptable. But a woman doesn't. Oh, what is this? So you really need to spend some time thinking. If you
what is her problem? Why
like
doesn't she know her? Why doesn't she know her place?
Exactly. Thank you.
And that's why that's why it's hard for me to take fanboys seriously, because, again, going back, not even that far long, I feel even back in even the Smallville days, back when I was still in high school looking at this stuff, there are so many people who still hated Lois's inclusion in that, oh, she shouldn't have known right before he was Superman, it makes no sense, this whole show sucks, Lois Lane's a terrible character, blah 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 blah. I think, again, it's much I'm not going to say it as intelligently as either of you have, but I think just all of that comes from a place of, men, fanboys don't want to see female characters because that's obviously not something they relate to or want to try to relate to. and they see anything taking away from their male favorites, or their masculine heroes who represent everything that they love about being a man. But when a woman comes in and kind of challenges that, and then it's like, oh, see, then that's just pandering, and I can't relate to women. Women suck, and blah 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 blah. For me, I can never take those people seriously. First of all, like whenever I've seen a criticism of Lois Lane, and like people, I hate that's like when you're right. Like when people say like, I love Superman, but I'm so tired of Lois Lane, blah blah blah. If you are a quote unquote Superman fan and don't like Lois Lane, you're not a true Superman fan. Like.
Exactly.
Or at least don't understand her importance in the story. I mean, like, okay, you don't just have to love her character, but Lois Lane has always been a part of Superman's story, and I think is always will be a part of Superman's story. She's always gonna be there. Like, just because you don't like her doesn't mean she's an awful character. Or just because Superman kind of is who he is partially because of Lois. And granted, there are interpretations of their relationship that haven't been ideal, and it's not like I would love to see in their relationship. But at the same time, like those iterations, like you get to see so many different incarnations of their relationship, whether it's the refilms, animated TV series, the comics, the Elseworld comics, the movies, whatever. Like there's kind of something for everyone there, and you don't need to keep discrediting women, Lois Lane especially, just because you don't want to try to relate to women in any way whatsoever. That's on you. That's not on the character.
Yeah, I think they've been conditioned. We've been conditioned by too long and too much of this being the general, normal fare that we're getting in entertainment, and they don't want to stretch beyond their comfort zone. But if you don't stretch out of your comfort zone, you don't grow. And so they've stagnated in their point, and I would love to see them do a little bit of, thinking and think that maybe they'd like to grow beyond that, but that takes, again, introspection, and that could be terrifying for some people. So,
and that's why go ahead.
They're invested in the status quo too. I mean, like the status quo. I mean, like you have to admit that the status quo benefits certain people, and those people are naturally going to be like, well, like this is my advantage. This is my toy. This has been my toy for decades. Why do you wanna make me share my toy? And I think that that reaction is really natural, but it's also something that people need to examine and be like, okay, well, like, why is it this way? Why it's not natural, it's constructed.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's for me, just in general. Like I'm always gonna look forward to the DCEU films, and at least in that aspect, because we see that pretty much in every film, even though like Suicide Squad again is my favorite film, but even like the female characters in that, I feel like their story also matters, and I gravitate more towards the female characters in that story, and I'm more interested in the female characters in that story. Whether it is Harley or even Amanda Waller or.
Can we talk about Amanda Waller now?
Speaking of segues, and it's funny. And for me, it's like walking into Suicide Squad. I love that. First of all, you kind of start out with Deadshot, but one of the first female characters you really see is Amanda Waller, and she's kind of bringing the idea of the Suicide Squad to these two people. And I feel like the story was, again, you're kind of hearing a little bit from her perspective of things. And I remember when the movie first came out, I was talking to my sister about it. My sister's not the biggest fan of superhero movies in general, so she always kind of goes in with like a critical mind of like, I'm not really gonna like this. So we were talking about Suicide Squad long after we saw it, and she was like, I don't really get Amanda Waller because like what was there really wasn't really anything to her character and blah blah blah. Like to me, like while there was more they could have explored, I think there was enough there with Amanda that. At least for me, I was satisfied as an audience member because, like, Amanda Waller is one of my favorite, like, DC characters outside of, like, the mainstream, like, Superman, Batman, and all of them. Because, like, she's a really complex character. Like, she's not always a straight-up villain. She's always not really all that good. But, especially, my first real exposure to her was in, the Justice League animated series, and as well as that one episode of Batman Beyond. Well, that kind of turned into a Justice League animated episode. But I love just how they... First of all, I also want to give credit to Viola Davis. She's one of the best working actresses today. And
Holy crap! Yeah.
she did an amazing job with the role. So maybe you guys want to all go around because I don't want to keep rambling. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to talk. What were your guys like? What would you guys love most about Amanda Waller? You'd say
She's just a badass. She doesn't take shit from anyone. Excuse me, but she does what she wants, and she's not gonna let anybody stop her, which is amazing to me.
Mm-hmm.
I love that she just sort of has like her own sense of morality, and she has her own sense of she has a code, and I think that that's what I really glom onto characters for, is that like, you know, you may be doing terrible things, and I think she does terrible things consistently throughout the story, but they're inside of her code, and that's how she rationalizes those things, and that's how she operates. And I think that makes her a very reliable character and a very interesting character, because she's definitely still following her own personal rules.
Mm-hmm.
She's not acting, you know, on impulse, and I think that's what makes her so powerful, is that, you know, on a certain level she's a true believer. I mean, she's someone who believes in something really specific, and that makes her extremely powerful. That makes her the kind of person who can sit across the table from Batman and be like, "I think you should stop working nights." Like that.
Only she can get away with that.
Yeah.
Holy crap!
I love her.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the movie, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely.
And for her to just kill during that cutscene, like just that you know, like an after credit scene, like something that's like kind of not even a DCEU thing, is really powerful. And she I don't know, I think she gets a huge share of the movie. She introduces the movie. She lets us know she's our character window. She brings us in, and she sets up the rules, and we have to follow the rules the same as the squad does.
Yep. Okay, that's actually a really interesting insight, because if she's the audience in character, which is really interesting, and I think you're right, like, she's shades of gray I always look at, but I agree with you. She's doing things within her code. It's just that her code, especially in comic land, doesn't fit a flat-out villain or a flat-out hero. But she does fit the U.S. government. And I will say, you know, I can apply this to governments as a whole, you know, but the U.S. government specifically, especially in this movie, is exactly that way. Doing things that they think are right within their quote-quote moral code for what they think are quote-quote the right reasons, you know, and yet it doesn't seem to fit anybody else's kind of, you know.
I mean, a Suicide Squad narrative that's not really critical of the United States prison system is just a flat nothing.
Yes,
Suicide
that would be
Squad
just
story.
completely wrong. But that was one of the
sense.
things I loved most about this film, is that there were no straight up heroes in it. Nobody was. Not the government, who's imprisoning people. I mean, granted, they're bad people, but you know what I mean. Like, and then is like, hey, you know what the heck? We'll just throw them together, and if they die, we write them off. Like, that's not okay, you know. And then you've got just the straight up criminals, and then you've got the god who wants to rule. And then, I mean, like, seriously, holy crap! Nobody in this film is good, and they made a point of that. Nobody was. Not even Rick Flag. Nobody was perfect, squeaky clean good. And so neither was she. Neither was who she worked for. But I loved how unapologetic she was about it. This is what she does. This is her job. She's doing it for the good of her nation. And by God, nobody is going to get in between her and that. And oh, gosh, Viola Davis just, wow. She just kind of blew me away. But it was just amazing, because I'm watching this going, holy crap. Like, I've seen that character before, but it's always been on a guy. And so it was awesome to see her step up and just be this amazing woman. And all I can ever think about is Rick Flag going, well, they warned me about you. My dumbass didn't listen. Every time, because I'm like, yep, I'm sure everybody hears the stories and goes, it's not that bad, and gets in and goes, holy crap, it's that bad. Oh, it's worse. I mean, it is just awesome, and she is a fascinating character to me. And without her, the film falls apart because she's the one who put together all these people. She's the one who executed the idea, and in the end, she was the one who the squad had to be after, so to speak, and then she was the one that Enchantress got a hold of and really had great information to start attacking military installations. So, without her, this show doesn't work. Without her, that movie falls flat. And so it's so neat to see everything rest so perfectly on her shoulders, and yet she's not the hero. And she is just, I don't know, I love Amanda Waller. She is such an interesting character to me. And I agree, Nick, with her shades of gray and her not quite on one side or the other or anything, but always doing what she feels. Oh, man, I really, really like her. And I just have nothing but mad respect. And the fact that at the end, Boomerang is like, oh, no, I'm going. I'm leaving, And she's like, she gets right in his face and he just backs down. And I'm like,
yeah.
I love her. She's just fearless and very unapologetic. And that is not a quality you find in a female very often. And I loved watching her wield that. It was incredible. Incredible. So, yeah, she was fabulous.
Yeah, for me, watching Suicide Squad, especially for the first time, I love that with, Harley and especially with Amanda Waller. I feel like with Amanda Waller, there was more or less, I kind of knew what to expect because, it's kind of hard to get Amanda Waller wrong in terms of a character, but of course with Viola Davis, I was expecting great things because she's a great actress. But for me, from the moment she first steps on screen, I knew that she was gonna be the Amanda Waller that I'm always gonna envision now. Yeah. There's something about just her presence on screen that to me shows that whether people like the movie or not, I think she's still gonna be a standout, and I think she was. And you can tell even she had fun getting into this role. I mean, you can say she's kind of played a similar-ish character on How to Get Away with Murder. I mean, I don't watch that show on a regular basis to know enough if that's true or not, but just from what the bits of the show that I have seen and Amanda Waller, just I kind of like what I said earlier, at least for myself, that I love that she's not inherently leans one way or the other, in terms of morality. She again, like you guys said, she kind of does her own thing and doesn't really care who's in her way. It was one thing that was kind of funny to see was in the end, because I haven't very often seen Amanda Waller vulnerable, but when at the end of the movie, when you have that little extra credit scene, you see that she kind of feels vulnerable when she's worried about the events of Midway City, leaking out to the public, and Bruce has to be the one to be like, I got you, unfortunately, but I got you, that's at least that's kind of what I read from the scene. Of all people, this
is a trade, man. This is a trade.
I got you, but I don't like you.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, exactly. But I'm doing it because I want that file right there. Give it to me. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's why, for me, I do wish there was a little bit more to her, but at the same time, it is a Suicide Squad movie, so she just, of course, isn't the only character, but I did like what we got with her, and I'm looking forward to what they do next, if she's going to be in the sequel, because they did just announce that.
So.
Yeah, that Gavin O'Connor's directing the sequel, and he directed Warrior and Ben Affleck in The Accountant last year, and that, from what I've heard, is actually pretty good. I still need to see it for myself, but I'm excited to see what they do next with her character. I hope she sticks around for Suicide Squad too.
Yeah, yes.
I mean, I think from this point on, maybe Justice League accepted, but I think that if they're smart, she becomes sort of like the Coulson of this universe.
Or the
because if we don't have connective fiber, we don't need connective fiber necessarily, but that connective fiber is a really strong grounding point, and she is so sturdy. She's a presence that can be counted upon. We kind of know, we know her in terms of her motives and in terms of how she does things. And I think that she would be a really strong presence walking through these films one by one, even if it's just for a second.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about Amanda Waller too. Is yes, her a lot of her character was tied to the Suicide Squad, but also to the Justice League and to Batman. And if they want to, like, she kind of could be the connective tissue. Like, she doesn't need to be in every single movie. That's not what we're saying at all. But, like, she could have an appearance in Justice League or one of its sequels or the Batman. 'Cause I feel like that might even be a good place. Like, if maybe, like, if Batman's investigating the Joker at some point and, like, he knows Waller is keeping an eye on him or something along those lines. Like, I can see her being involved in that capacity. I just think more Viola Davis as Amanda Waller is never a bad thing. So whatever they include her in next, I'm all for. Especially now that, like, they kind of, like, from what has been announced, like, they seem to be kind of expanding, like the Suicide Squad side of the DCEU a little more with Suicide Squad 2, Gotham City Sirens, and now possibly a Harley and Joker movie. I'm not 100% sure, but, you know, we'll see if that comes to fruition. But I would just, if she's involved in any of those films or all of those films, all I know is I'm game.
Oh yeah, me too.
And so to kind of finish off here, there are still a lot more DCEU films to come, and I think for me, one of my most anticipated, other than the Justice League, of course, is Aquaman. And the one character in that I'm really looking forward to that we haven't seen in any capacity other than in pictures and that one bit in the trailer is Mira. And
yes,
I can't wait to see Mira. Mira is one of my favorite characters, female characters within DC, and just how much of a badass she is. And, like, especially when, you know, like, I'm a big fan of the Young Justice animated series, and in that, she was in one episode. She was pregnant and still willing to kick some ass. Like,
that was awesome.
Yeah, like, and that's the kind of character that Mira is, and, like, I would love, like, other than, don't need to make her pregnant or anything, but I'd love that to see, like, that version of Mira, like, the badass, like, no matter what, is gonna stand up and fight for her people. You know, I can't wait to see it, and I think Amber Heard's gonna do a good job, and she definitely looks the part. She looks fantastic.
Definitely.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but of course that's also, like, Michael Wilkinson, who's one of the best costume designers ever.
He's doing a really fabulous job. I can say.
Yeah.
Not a bat nipple in sight. I'm so
God,
happy.
I know.
Yay!
And that's another subtle thing I want to also bring up too, is that in the costume designing in the DCEU, other than maybe Harley's, because Harley's, like, you can kind of say, you know, her character kind of owns her sexuality. Other than Harley, there aren't any other, like, sexualized female characters in terms of their design in the DCEU at all either.
Not really.
Mira's straight out of the comic, so she's got a bit
And
of a punching
hopefully,
neckline, but so did the comic, you know, and you're right, Lois, even in the tub, dang it, we just never got skin, you know, which I'm good with, but, you know, and that wasn't a costume, like, he didn't design that.
No, yeah,
but,
of course.
you know, like, all of her clothes are work casual, exactly what she does, and they're not, I'm dressing sexy to get ahead. You know, I can't even, let me go down the list here. Yeah, I don't think there is one objectified female on this list, except Harley, which, you know, is who she is.
Yeah.
So, and maybe Enchantress, but, you know, she's already got this weird thing that, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If I've got to bring up one thing, I mean, I think that my point of dissent on that is probably Enchantress's character design, which I've kind of never been on board with, and I'm not a big fan. And I just think that, I don't know. I think Enchantress in general, on the Enchantress side, I think the June Moon side is very interesting, but I think that the Enchantress side was underthought. And I wish that we would have, I don't know. I think someone should have probably gone back to the drawing board with that on a personal level.
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, like,
I'm curious. Sorry, let me just ask a question. What's she like in the comics? Like, I have no experience with her. So, what's her costume usually like?
I mean,
I'm actually. Does anyone know?
Yeah, I mean, she
I haven't actually read.
All right.
yeah, no, but I mean, from what I can remember, I think she just kind of looks like she's wearing, like, a classic witch outfit, but green.
I think so.
Like, that's pretty much it. Like her look, like, they took a lot of liberties with her look in the movies, and I didn't even hate her look necessarily. I just think, like, I remember when it first came out, when they showed kind of her look with, like, the big, like, crown thing going on as she's working the machine. Like, I thought that looked pretty cool, but within context of the story, I mean, like, I just wish that, like, they fleshed out Enchantress and gave us a more, not necessarily grounded because she's a witch, but I just wish that they did more to the character to make her a little more interesting instead of little. To me, it's just a little one-dimensional, and I just wish they did more. Again, the June Moon stuff was fine. Like, it sucks because I think I read an interview where like Cara Delevingne says like she doesn't think she's gonna be in the Suicide Squad sequel, which sucks because I think like she was never the problem with the Enchantress character. That was just like that was just in the writing and.
No, I think that was the best half of her performance. I think that was where their performance strength was, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would have loved her to be a little bit more three-dimensional and 360-degree developed, simply because I'm spoiled now. That's what we usually get.
Yeah.
From the DC. But at the same time, I will say, like, did anybody remember, like, after Suicide Squad came out, somebody popped up a screenshot of Enchantress in her costume, and then mentioned a 20s silent movie that it evoked, and that has always kind of stuck with me. I don't know if that's what the designer was going for.
I think I remember seeing that.
Yeah, it is very 20s-like in a lot of ways, and it's still exposing a lot of flesh. But back in the day, that would have been like the kind of burlesque idea. But that is very 20s, and so it's evocative of an earlier time, which, granted, when she and her brother were captured, like, wow, that was way before 20s. But still, he seems to be going for that silent film 20s era, and I don't know if it just doesn't fit because, like, nothing about this film in any other way evokes that, or if he just thought it was really cool and ran with it. I agree. It's a kind of hard to say. But that always stuck with me, and I thought that was fascinating simply because as a costumer, that's something that sometimes you go with, where you just don't know what to do with a person, and so you take inspiration from an earlier something and go with it. You might hit the target with it, you might miss, but and so I totally see your point, but I thought that was interesting, and I would love to interview the costumer just for the fun of it. All right, so where exactly does he come from with all this? Tell me your thought process. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. So again,
I think it would be fantastic if she came out of this like looking like basically like Swamp Thing from the neck down, and I would have been way more on board on a personal level. I think like I don't understand. I don't think that the thing about the sexualization in those scenes is that I don't feel it coming from anywhere. Like for Harley, I feel it coming from somewhere. I feel it coming from Harley. I feel it coming from her abusive relationships. I feel like it comes from her trying to grapple with her own sexuality. There's a lot of good reasons for Harley to be in hot pants, in my opinion. I think that I've gone to bat for that costume several times, and I know Margot Robbie has gone to bat for that costume, which is what really matters to me. But with Enchantress, I don't see it coming from anywhere. It is the one thing that I feel seems needless. Okay. And I mean, like that's really my beef with it, is that it doesn't seem to come from anywhere specific. Yeah, that's the only thing.
I totally see your point. That's cool.
Yeah, and that's why I always, like, for me, like, when I first saw Enchantress for the first time, I'm like, okay, that's different, but I'll see how it is in context of the movie. And again, like, they didn't need to go with the full-on, like, bikini kind of look for her. Like, you're right, it was kind of pointless. Like,
there was a lot of flesh, so you're right, it wasn't needed.
Well, and when they had her sitting in that bathtub in some of the preview photos, I was so freaking excited because that aesthetic was so cool and so weird and so disturbing, and just the June Moon half of it is the whole aesthetic, I think, is really, really powerful.
Interesting.
And I think that, I mean, like, they could have gone full weirdo, and I think I'm pretty sure Kara would be totally on for it because she's a genuine weird girl and a really committed, like, artsy fartsy, for the lack of a better word, artist. When it comes to acting, I think that would have been a really cool opportunity for her.
Agreed. That could have been really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, like, from what she was implying, I don't know if she is coming back, but I would like to see her come back and play some sort of role, especially because of how, even though it wasn't always focused on her importance to Rick Flag and his humanity. So, I mean, while she isn't 100% necessary to the story, I would like to see Cara Delevingne come back, especially, like, it seemed like she had fun working with everyone, even though she wasn't necessarily
Yeah.
part of the squad. Like, I would like to see June Moon back. And
Yeah.
maybe there is some, like, if there's a way they can maybe redeem the Enchantress part, I wouldn't mind, but at least keep June Moon around, and she can still be, like an ops person on the team. You know, she kind of serve, like, the Scott Eastwood kind of role if they really wanted to.
You know, I would love to see her in that, just because, I don't know, if they built the plot to where she was necessary for her archaeological knowledge / skills, you know, that would be so cool. I'd be totally down with that, you know? I mean, make it a little bit like the Mummy, you know, and bring her in and have her be the necessary person, because nobody else is going to know this crap, and, you know, that would be so, so cool. Crap, now I want that. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. And again, God, I feel like we're already talking for over an hour and a half. We haven't even hit like Wonder Woman or Justice League or anything.
I was saying, we've got about half of the list now.
I know. No, and that's the awesome thing, is that there's so many layers to these characters that we really could go on. And I think for most other film franchises that are going on right now, you can't really say the same about their female characters. Like, you can't go as in depth as you would want to with certain, like, you know. That's why, like, I'm not ashamed of going on for however many hours it takes to go over these characters, because they're that layered and they're that awesome, and I could talk about them all day.
Yep. And there's so much meat to them. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah, there really
It's
is
really
too,
cool.
and that's.
Well, and I think in most of these franchises, I mean, especially for this genre, like, this would probably be a pretty reasonable assignment, because you would have like 5 characters you really had to talk about, and then that would be it, and it'd be the end, and we'd be like, whatever, that was great, you know. But just, you know, we're talking about a franchise where we get closer to 50% than we've ever been before. And that is so huge for me, and so big, and just like something that, you know, really sells the whole DCEU to me for more than anything, is that, like, we literally just sort of treat the universe like women are a given.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Like you're right. Like, you're not watching these movies and feel like, oh, the women are just there to serve like the man's story. Like, they're there because, you know, just women are there. Like, it's not like you have to delve too deeply into it. Like, women are part of these people's lives, and they're part of the story, and that's
My gosh,
it.
almost like the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
And that's why, like, I could, like, honestly, and I think, like, especially with a film like Batman vs Superman, even though people like say, like, oh, like, what was Wonder Woman's like real purpose in that movie? I think, if anything, her purpose is to kind of help, like, show kind of like where things could go. Obviously, with them teaming up for Justice League and stuff, but also to kind of like widen the scope of the DC universe in general. That there are, like, especially with Batman, that there's more than just Superman flying around. That you also have this woman who's like quite literally like a goddess, and she's there. He doesn't know much about her. He wants to find out more about her, and it makes like his part of the story also more interesting, because Wonder Woman is just there. You know, she doesn't even necessarily have to do anything, and Bruce is already like, oh, whoa, who is she? You know, so for me, I'm like, just like her presence alone in that movie, I think makes it that much more enjoyable. Not even just for the fact that she has an amazing theme, and I love Gal Gadot so much, but because I think,
Right?
but because
Agreed.
I just think Wonder Woman, especially from going from Batman vs Superman to Justice League, I think she's an amazing character, and I'm happy that Batman vs Superman was the film to kind of introduce her to the cinematic world, because this obviously it was her first cinematic appearance, at least in like live action anyway. Like, for me, I can go back and be like, especially after watching Wonder Woman and being like, what was Diana's mindset in the present day compared to where it was at the end of World War II after she lost Steve Trevor? Like, now I can go back and look at those things, and again, you can see the subtle differences in Gal's performance from Batman vs Superman to Wonder Woman, and because by the end of Wonder Woman, you kind of see that kind of like world weariness in the present day, but by then it's obviously post Batman vs Superman, so she has a little more. She's kind of driven to kind of, you know, save the world again, but also like you can still see her struggle with, you know, still accepting Steve's death and being motivated, and her place in Batman vs Superman is also to kind of also be motivated by the events of the story and by the events and by Clark's sacrifice, because that's also a big factor in what brings her back to humanity as well.
Yes, and that's what, in turn, then moves forward into them looking for other people to join the Justice League, so it all plays into itself.
Yeah.
But I also think that she was necessary because Bruce was so fixated on bringing down Superman that he kind of needed somebody else in there shaking up his secure plan and world.
Yeah.
And that was her,
So,
you know. He
it's
goes
so
to get the
funny.
hard drive, she's got it, you know. He sneaks up on her and is like, oh, I finally tracked you down. She's like, whatever, I know who you are. You know, oh, and I know all your intentions, you know. So, I mean, it's really cool because he's like, oh. And it makes him kind of stop and think. It shakes him a bit out of his, I'm so secure in the fact that I know more than everybody else and I'm going to drive through this plan, you know. And it's really kind of cool. And you can tell she kind of stings him a little bit, you know, with taking his hard drive and ticking him off and then, you know, but then returning it and mentioning that boys don't like to share, and he's like, do too, you know, like he needed that shake up to kind of, you know, get him up a little bit. He needed somebody in there who was new and different and kind of tipped him on his butt because Alfred's trying, but Alfred's been part of his life forever and he's just blowing Alfred off. And so he needed somebody else in there to go, dude, you know, and that was her.
Also, this poor man spends the entire movie on the edge of a panic attack about a metahuman for the entire movie. Just terrified, out of his mind, having nightmares about this dude. And then the way that we finish this movie is just by being like, P.S. Bruce, they're freaking everywhere. It's too late. Like, it's over. You're now the least powerful superhero in the world.
Yep.
Congratulations.
Right. Oh, that's awesome. And he's like, you know what? Spend all this time feeling threatened, but I guess I'm gonna have to deal with it. All right.
And that's why, like, I love that scene when he's looking through the files and he finds the photo. You can see that look. He's like almost terrified to say, like, "Oh my God, she's like, what is she?"
He's up it.
Like, oh my God, like just kind of seeing Bruce Wayne's world shatter when he realizes that there's more than just Superman there, and you kind of bring up an interesting point. Like, at the time, he's so fixated on Superman and his kind of like fear and frustration towards Superman, and he realizes, oh wait, there's this Wonder Woman who's at least over a century old.
Yeah.
In his life now.
To know a lot and what's going on. Well, and then the detective mind starts going, and it's like, holy crap, she hasn't aged a bit. Why hasn't she aged a bit? Where's she been all this time? How come we don't know about her? What's going on? What is she? Who is she? What's going on? You know, so of course then he's got to send her an email, you know, hey, I need answers, you know, and so it's actually really cool because it hits him on several different levels, and that's just awesome.
I think it's interesting too because I think that's one of the weird quirks of anxiety is that when it's all focused on one particular subject, it can be very overwhelming, and that's like when panic attacks most often happen, when you're focused on just like one thing and you're fixating. But one of the best ways to diffuse that is actually to disperse the panic and just realize that the whole world is scary and that there's just too much fear to focus on. And that's kind of what we do to him, is we kind of go, okay, well, actually the world has been terrifying for a long time, you just haven't noticed, and you can't be scared of Superman because you're gonna be too busy being scared of everything else.
Yep. Oh, that's really cool. And you're right, it can be all consuming when you're focused on just that one thing. Oh, that's awesome.
And that's why, like, just like when people say, like, what was Wonder Woman's role really in Batman vs Superman really was and all that important, and I think it was. Because again, like now, like especially for me, again, like I just said, that one of my favorite things to do now is to look back on, like, you know, post Wonder Woman, looking at her character. I mean, like, what has she gone through in the last 100 years after World War One? Because you really wondered these things, like, no pun intended.
Yeah, you raised the bar.
Yeah, and no, but like, and then of course during her movie, like, you really, I love like how her character was treated. Like, she wasn't like after watching Wonder Woman, I'm so glad it didn't end up being Joss Whedon who'd made that movie.
Yeah, no.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Am I the only one who's read the script?
Nope.
No. I'm not proud of it. Let me just say it wasn't pleasurable, you know?
It's a good exercise.
I couldn't even finish it. I'm just like,
I'll admit, I skimmed because it was like, I couldn't handle it.
Yeah, and that's what, like, that, and then everything that has come out from Joss Whedon's ex-wife of how much like a fake feminist he is, and how abusive he was, and he cheated, took advantage of all these young women. I don't want that piece of shit anywhere near the DCEU. Like, I'm
terrified for Batgirl. That's all I'm gonna say.
Me too.
I'm like, no.
I know. And like, and of all things, like, in the fact that they weren't even gonna do it until he said something. I'm like, just give it to someone else. Like,
yes, like Patty.
Oh God, I know. Like, I mean, I know she's gonna be busy with Wonder Woman too, but like,
that'd be so cool though.
I know. Just give any other female character to Patty. But
let's get another female director.
Exactly. Like,
it's true.
Yeah,
you
like
know, Patty doesn't have to be the only one. So.
I don't know. Maybe get in like an Ava DuVernay or I don't know any other female directors who are coming out right now, because just everything that's come out of Joss. First of all, we've already discussed at length our problems with Joss Whedon, but especially with everything that's come out in the last few weeks about him and his past, I don't want him handling another one of DC's biggest female characters, because I'm afraid of what he's gonna do to her. Like,
yeah, me too.
I'm very worried.
Like physically and character wise. Like, I'm really concerned. Like,
I mean, Batgirl's such a sensitive character in the first place. Like, the thing is that, like, you have to look at that context, and you have to be like, she's a sexual assault survivor. She's, she's habitually disabled. We have all of this baggage with Barbara, and if we're going to use Barbara, we need someone who's going to be really sensitive to that baggage. And I feel like, that person should have at least one intersection. That person should be, disabled, should be a sexual assault survivor, should be someone who can at least get on one level with Barbara. And we can be pretty sure that the Joss really, I mean, like, just hearing him talk about her,
what's her damage?
Yeah, has been bracing, because it's like, how can you sign someone who just clearly shows at a basic level that he doesn't understand the character?
Yeah,
it's very concerning.
Yeah, and it's just, for me, again, just look at the background character, especially with everything that's going on with, like, the Killing Joke and how that version of Barbara was portrayed. Like, not even just, like, all the things like Danielle just mentioned about the fact that she's a sexual assault survivor and was previously disabled, and all of those things. I swear to God, if Joss introduces some sort of, like, romantic relationship between her and Bruce Wayne, I swear to God.
That seems to be the trend now.
They did it in the Lego movie. They
stop doing it so much that you make it just the right thing, Please stop. So, yeah.
Someone forcibly retire Bruce Timm.
I know. Oh God, I know.
Don't do it.
Seriously.
That's why, like, I think someone.
Sometimes it's over.
That's why I think.
Sometimes you need to know when to quit.
Oh God, I know, and especially because, like, I don't know. Have any of you seen that new Batman and Harley Quinn movie yet?
I have.
Okay,
Just screenshots.
Yeah, me too. But
fine, minus the Harley and Nightwing thing.
That was
not that at all.
So wait, so doesn't she, like, essentially like rape him, or is that like?
She gets verbal consent. Yeah.
But he felt like ashamed afterwards, so no, it was just disgusting. No, I didn't like it.
It definitely seemed coerced.
Yeah, that's concerning, and especially like, I'm just, that whole thing is just. That's why, like, someone brought up recently, like, I think a lot of the success of the previous Bruce Timm series was a lot of Paul Dini, not necessarily Bruce Timm.
True.
And I can't say whether or not that's true or not, but just what Bruce has been doing lately, and I'm just going off what everyone else has told me. I still haven't seen The Killing Joke. I've only seen what people have been talking about. Like, I'll look at to those instances.
Either.
Like, but for me, it's just, I don't want, just looking at those instances of what Bruce Timm has done lately, I don't want that to reflect on what's going to happen in the Batgirl movie, especially in the direction of Joss. I'm just really, really concerned. I just hope that it.
I mean, as a Joss Whedon, I mean, like, as an, I guess, ex, I don't know, I'm still a huge Buffy fan, but as an ex Joss Whedon fan, like, he has a huge fixation on sexual assault.
Yeah, he
does. He loves to include sexual assault.
For them to become a hero somehow, and that bugs
me. And that's the main concern for me, is that,
that's
like,
scary.
that could become the center of the movie very quickly, and it's absolutely in his instincts to write it that way.
Yes.
And I try to be fair to him. I try to be fair to him because I think that he does make a lot of room for female characters. I think that he gets on the first step of that feminist journey, and then he just hangs out on that first step. But like, you know, I give him credit for taking that first step, but I do think that, like, knowing his body of work, there's a huge risk of this movie becoming about Barbara's sexual assault.
Yes. Well, and then on top of, he's got this issue with wanting to hurt women or wanting them to become a hero, and then you've got someone who's disabled. Oh no! So it's a twofer, and that mounts the scary factor for me. It's just getting too much scary.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I hope for the best, but also at the same time, like, just again between everything that's going on lately, and this is coming from someone like I never watched his previous series. I'd only ever seen his Avengers movies, but even then, like, for me, my fear comes from just post Age of Ultron and how Black Widow was treated in that film. And that on top of everything else coming out lately, my faith in the guy has really gone down, and especially and also that combined with the whole Justice League situation, where if the film's good, people will say it's because of Joss, or if it's bad, it's gonna get blamed on Zack Snyder, and it's just like that. Also,
can't catch a break.
Yeah,
nothing we can do about that.
Yeah, I know. It just sucks as fans.
It's gonna be the way it is. We just gotta knuckle under and fight the good fight.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm just like, oh look, we're back for war, because you know there's nothing. You're right. There's nothing we can do to prevent that. It's gonna happen. So we're just gonna have to.
Yeah, it's like.
Lock
Yeah,
in.
it's like every time there's a new movie coming out, or anything coming from DCEU, I'm just like, I'm so excited for this to happen. I'm so excited. I'm gonna get my tickets. I'm gonna book it, but then at the same time, a week before, I'm just like, guys, brace yourself. Wait.
It's so
Twitter,
funny.
Facebook, everywhere. Just get ready for the hate or for the criticism or for the nitpicking or whatever it is. It's just really hilarious.
Willful misunderstanding. That's my favorite. I'll just misinterpret that so that I can complain. What?
So I'm just like, I'm going. I've already booked my tickets, and I'm going, and I'll probably go more than once. Justice League, I'm thinking it's
I'm just gonna ignore the world. I'm gonna go. Yeah. I'm gonna take my daughter after that. I'm probably gonna go see it a third time with my best friend, and there might be a couple matinees. By myself, if it's that good, and you know what, the heck with the rest of the world, I'm done. If I want this movie, I'm gonna go enjoy the crap out of it.
Me too. And that's how it was with Batman vs Superman. I saw Batman vs Superman in total 9 times in its theatrical run, and that's including
going to that. I could not do it. It was like, oh, I got a free afternoon.
Well, because my thing is because
I got a free ticket.
I know, me too. Like, I got free. So the first time I saw it, I got advanced screening tickets through one of the local news channels here. So I went and saw it early for free. I saw opening night. I saw it that Saturday, and then I saw it like a few days later when I was in Seattle, and then I saw it like several times on my own because the tickets at my local AMC theater were like they were like $5 at the time.
Oh,
and,
yeah. Awesome.
And then also had a bunch of like gift cards used, so I didn't spend too much money on it. But one of my favorite experiences was when they had that one night event right before the Ultimate Edition was released digitally, when they had the Ultimate Edition in theaters. But for me, the closest one to me was in LA, and it was a free screening. So I got the tickets for it, and at the time, I was like transitioning from job to job, and I didn't have a ton of money. I barely had money for gas, and I'm like, do I really, really want to make the 3-hour journey to see this movie? And luckily, like, my friend was nice enough to help me out, and she gave me some money for gas, and I ended up I left at like 1:00 in the afternoon. I drove up to LA, waited in line for 3 hours to see that movie, and that was probably one of the best movie going experiences I've ever had, other than when I saw Wonder Woman for the first time. Seriously, seeing the Ultimate Edition, because it was, other than some of like some critics who were there, like I saw some of the guys from Collider and Collider Movie Talk, and I'm just but so many of those people were just fans of Batman versus Superman, and I saw a bunch of people who I recognized from YouTube who are they aren't like super big on YouTube. They have like a few thousand subscribers, and like I recognize them from their DCEU stuff. I'm like, oh hey, like I recognize you. And then like I saw like another guy who like worked for Warner Brothers, and like I followed him on Twitter for a while, and he was really cool. But like everyone there was just they're all just huge fans of the movie, and I felt like it was the first time in a while that I felt like, especially being in person, that I can talk about how much I love this movie without being judged, and seeing just having that experience on top of the awesomeness that was the Ultimate Edition. That was it was an unforgettable experience, and I loved it.
That is awesome. Yep, glad you did.
Awesome.
Totally worth it. Tuesdays became my favorite day of the week because that's when the theaters around me have $5 days, and it was like, awesome. Here we go.
Yeah, in Manchester here, so there was this law or something that we have Odeon and then we have AMC, and it couldn't stay at the place it was, so it had to move somewhere else. And then obviously AMC's owned, but Odeon is owned by AMC, so now the new company that took the other place is $4.99, and Odeon that just opened up in AMC's place is also $4.99 for a ticket. So
Wow.
that's like £4.99 just to watch a movie, which is dead cheap. And then I don't know, but I think it charges you more here for movies that you want to watch, like if you want to book them and if they're midnight viewings, which I'm definitely going to the midnight viewing for Justice League, so I don't know, hopefully it won't be too much, but I don't really care. I'm watching it as soon as I can watch it, I will.
Yeah, and that's
So close, guys, it's so close.
I know.
I was thinking that the other day. I'm like, holy cow, November's coming up.
I know, it's like literally, we're less than 2 months away now, I think, right? November, what is it, 17th, I think?
Yeah.
We're just about 2 months away. Wow.
9 weeks and
So
5
close.
days exactly.
To be close
I'm going
then-
on the 16th.
to that, I have 18 months, and then that's it. We have a long time to wait for the next movie, Aquaman.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a long
So
wait.
far away.
I don't want it to come because then I'm just like there for a good year or so. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's why it sucks. Like,
We're so spoiled.
I know, it's literally what I was
know.
gonna say. Like, okay, but the one thing I could say, like, okay, if we can deal with like the 2.5+ years between Man of Steel and Batman vs Superman, I think we can handle like the 13-month wait from Justice League to Aquaman.
The
Yeah.
wait for Batman
we
vs
can.
Superman is on my list of 10 top things that have happened to me that are the worst. That, like, it was a terrible, terrible time. Like, I can't even, like, I just look back on it and just like, this fandom isn't that old, but I feel like a fandom old lady in the DCEU.
Oh, I feel the
Because
same
I was
way.
like,
Yeah.
I aged 10 years, you guys, watching this news come out. Like,
Oh,
I
God, I
got
know.
so old so fast. It was just like, you know, I feel like a war veteran for this fandom.
Right, and I feel the same way because like back in the early days of just the Man of Steel fandom, when it wasn't that many people, like we were like aching for any bit of like news like post Man of Steel about Batman versus Superman, that, like
And the rumors.
oh god, the
and-
like the fake
and
scripts.
the continued fighting about the freaking Zod scene.
Oh, God, I
And like
know.
just it was like one front of defending Man of Steel and one front of like just being terrified constantly that Batman versus Superman was going to be like nothing. Like that was my big thing. Is I was like, this might have been it. This might have been my movie. And then, you know, what if that's it?
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, all I remember is that I was like, Dark Knight Returns. I actually read that comic as a kid. That's one of the few I ever read. Didn't like it. I was like,
Yeah.
well, I'll just sit back and relax. So I must have I think I just kind of stuffed my head in the sand, just enjoyed my Man of Steel, happiness, and was like, whatever, when it comes out, I'll go see it, And then I saw the trailer and it was like, whoa, and it was like, hey, don't get excited, it's fine, just stick your head in the sand further, so I just ignored it all until it came out, and then it all just kind of exploded. So I didn't age 10 years, but, it did kind of knock me on my butt in a good way.
No, yeah, and I swear because it just back then it was just. I feel like we were waiting forever just for that first trailer.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even then,
yeah.
like that, it was like leaked online, and like the next day, Zach tweeted it out and was like, "Here's the non-leaked, here's the non-shaky version," and I'm like, "Oh my god."
Let's do
Okay,
this.
guys. So, I'd just like to say I have to go. It was really nice joining this conversation whenever I could, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. I really have to go.
No, it's okay.
Sorry.
Thanks for joining us.
It's
Yeah.
great talking to you.
Yeah, and we're probably gonna
Thank
be
you.
cutting off here in a second because that's 2 hours is a long time to be talking about women. But no, but like I'm glad. Like
We deserve 15 hours. That's like the bare minimum.
I know, I know.
Sorry.
But no, I'm glad we were all able to hang out. Okay, thanks again for joining us. It was I love talking about this subject. I could talk about it all day, but unfortunately I got work.
Okay,
So
bye, guys.
bye.
Bye.
Hi. But I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, but just but back in the early days of just the waiting for Batman vs Superman, that whole process was just. It was stress. It was a really stressful time. Like
It was.
like just you're waiting for anything, and then every little thing. Like one thing that really frustrated me was when Zach first. I think it was from Comic-Con in 2015 when the trailer was announced. Or no. Oh no, it was the Comic-Con in 2014 when they released the first look at Wonder Woman, and there were so many people on Tumblr criticizing how sexualized she looked and blah blah blah. I'm like,
I
that's
was like, what?
I know,
The
like
Xena crap. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
like I
Like as a Xena fan, like as someone who like basically like became a fan in the fandom, and I was just like, you guys, like Xena really like she ripped off Xena by like basically taking something from history. You guys understand how history works, right? Like
No, I guess not.
No, it just kind of shows their lack of education, knowledge,
Thought.
history,
And
logic.
It's just like, really? That's all you think? You think they just dreamed up Xena out of the clear blue sky and ran with it? Oh, okay. So, I don't know. It's just, their lack of thought, I think that's a good one.
like if it's just
also,
go ahead.
and in defense of Xena, like if Diana, shared 50% of her personality traits with Xena, it would be fine and awesome. Like, like you haven't watched enough Xena if you're mad about that.
Well, cause it just I don't know, like I just remember like seeing that, and I'm like, what? Like that was the first point. Like obviously, like with Beal and Man, so there's a lot of dumb criticism now, but that was one of the first really dumb criticisms. Was the look. I'm like, that's about as like classic Wonder Woman as you could get without it being too sexualized or it
Like,
basically looking like a bikini.
Classic
Like
Greco-Roman, baby. I was
And-
just delighted that it wasn't Linda Carter's costume. No offense to Linda Carter's Wonder Woman. Just that, it was the tiny bustier and the little shorts, and that was in the boots, and that was pretty much it. And so I was like, yeah, she's got more than that. I was happy.
A vast improvement, in my opinion. A vast
And
improvement.
it's made for battle. It's armor.
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at the whole thing going, oh yeah, I'm getting the gladiator vibe. I mean, that's just cool. Of course, I don't know. It fit.
I'm always going to argue for a skirt, though. I'm always going to argue for a skirt because I just, like, I don't think that male comic book artists think about camel toe. I just don't. And I think that that's a thing. Like, that's a thing. That's a consideration. Like, you don't, want your... I mean, most of these costumes don't have, like,
Yeah, they're amazing. They skin
genitalia
tight, and it's like,
exposed.
you can draw it like that, but that doesn't mean it's going to wear the same in real life, guys. So, this is
Yeah,
true.
I mean, like, a skirt is practical, and this isn't even really a skirt so much.
No, I'm going to say
like,
it's a skirt slash, it's that
armor.
same thing. Yeah, with the leather pieces and the way that they're all different pieces. The entire point of that was protection, but it's not a skirt because the whole thing doesn't lift up when you move. When you lift one leg or move one way, just those pieces that are affected go with it. The rest of it stays down. And so it gives you far more protection and, heck, dare I say it, modesty, than an actual skirt would. I mean, that's exactly what the gladiators wore. That is armor, guys. I don't understand why you're complaining. I don't know. I was delighted, too, about, and I think I've said this before, just how the top was so armor-like, but then they made sure that the top of her top came down flat across her breast. Like, it was not an occasion to be like, okay, let's see how far up we can push her boobs and cram them together, make sure we get this incredible cleavage line.
Yeah.
Instead, it was, this is for battle, so of course the eagle's going to lay flat and give protection and hold everything in. Oh my gosh, thank you.
I mean, you can tell a lot. You can tell a lot about how individual artists feel about her based on where her bustier ends.
Yep.
Yes.
In a very tangible way. Like you can definitely feel their attitude toward her based on how low that bustier goes, and it's very, very important that we put it all the way up on her chest where it could be useful. Like it's armor. It's all function.
Yes. Supposed to protect.
Yeah. And I totally forgot what I was gonna say, but just again, I'm looking at the post that Katie just reblogged on Tumblr, just of the No Man's Land scene, and probably one of the best examples of just the awesomeness of her armor. Again, it feels like she really is going into battle, and it's not like, oh yeah, now I remember what I was gonna say. Like my fiance just recently got me the first Injustice game, and there's obviously there's the two different versions of Wonder Woman in that. And I remember I was playing the game, and at one point my fiance's like, "Why did they make her boobs so big in that?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's no, it's like
excellent question, honey. You're right. Why did they?
Yeah, and it's unnecessary, and the way because I think it was the evil versions of hers armors, you can really see her.
Of course.
Boobs. Yeah, and
of course.
And I'm just like, yeah, I mean, I already have enough problems with the Justice storyline as it is for how it's treated Superman and all of that, and even Wonder Woman to an extent. It's funny because I haven't had the chance to really bring this up. We get such an amazing version of Wonder Woman in her film, and it's awesome. And then in the same year, we also get, in my opinion, one of the worst incarnations of Wonder Woman in the Justice storyline because that's so out of character.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I don't mind the games or the storyline as much, but her and Superman to me, I know the evil Superman is kind of the basis of the games, but just because as a Superman fan and even as a Wonder Woman fan, that's just not who they are. And when people say
that's what.
Yeah.
That's why when people keep saying that oh, Injustice is the Batman versus Superman that we should have gotten and blah blah blah. This is how the DCEU should be. Blah blah blah.
No. Well, it's basically they're making an alternate universe. It's like the Watchmen, basically. They're making an alternate universe where they're what if this character was not this character? Why is that interesting, guys?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? Unless you hate the character, unless you want a whole entire new character, make a new character then. That's what DC told Alan Moore in the first place. He was like, hey, can I make Superman into a giant dick? And they were like, how about no? Just make your own character, dude. We had common sense at one point. We really did.
Yeah.
And this AU thing is getting out of control.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, and now also to kind of tie this in now because now DC, I guess, they're working on their own new alternate universe movie, starting with a Joker origin movie, and I'm just
Snore.
It's funny,
I can't see because I'm not even entirely sure. It might be an idea, but
yeah, I'm not sure
we're getting
how.
information way too early now, and half of this stuff is probably not going to pan out. And as always, it's kind of a rumor until I see a trailer.
Yeah.
And even then, you're right. It'll be okay, that's totally Elseworld, but I'm not entirely sure why that's a great idea. So, you know, I'm just going to take it all with this giant bag of salt here and go,
I mean, Warner Brothers can do whatever it wants. I've opted into the DCEU.
Yeah.
That's what I've opted into.
That's
this is my timeline. This is my universe. If they want me to get invested in other timelines and other universes, they're going to have to try with me from scratch. They're going to have, we'll see. But I'm not going to be loyal to DC as a whole because that's always a mistake. And I have never ever not been sabotaged by that.
Blind loyalty, will bite you in the end.
Yeah, I've never been blind. I support DC all the time. Of course there are things that they do that I don't necessarily like. I can name a bunch of instances, but just for me, again, I'm not a blind fan. There are times when I'm not a fan. I get I can look at the CW shows, for example. I used to love all those shows individually at some point, but looking at The Flash this season, or Supergirl this season, or Arrow seasons 3 or 4, I had a lot of problems with those shows. And just because I'm a DC fan doesn't mean I have to love everything DC does. In fact, there's a lot of things they do that piss me off. But they also do a lot of good things that are things that I do enjoy. So it's almost like a double-edged sword in that like there's always gonna be something that pisses me off, but at the same time there's always gonna be something that I find enjoyment in. And in the DCEU right now is what I find enjoyment in from DC. And I don't always love what they're doing on the television end because like I can go on about like how much I don't like Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, or like the way they handle Felicity Smoke and Arrow, or how they butchered the storyline of this past season of The Flash. Like I can go on about that, but that's kind of I have better things to do with my time than focus on that. So I'd rather just spend my time talking about something that I actually do enjoy and not have to worry about just the things that I don't enjoy all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and it's possible that this new slate of movies, if it even ends up happening, if it gets off the ground, is just not going to be like in that purview, and that's fine. Like that's not something that we have to necessarily like. For me, it's not something I'm necessarily worried about.
Mm-hmm. Well, because I think a lot of, at least for us, like when we first kind of heard that news, at least for me and some of the people I've seen, that it's just we want them to focus on the DCEU films, because there's a lot of stuff that we like. A lot of us want to see a Man of Steel sequel. We want to see the Batman. We want to see the Flash's movie. We want to see all these other characters' movies, and they're aiming their attention towards something else, like a Joker origin movie, which we don't really need. A Joker and Harley.
A whole lot of people clamoring for that.
Yeah, and then a Joker and Harley Quinn movie, which we don't really need. And it's like all this stuff. Like I don't mind like the Suicide Squad characters getting more stuff, but like I don't want them to do that at the expense of losing the other characters that we've already grown attached to and within these few films already. Like sometimes I like Warner Brothers and what they do for the most part, but sometimes this is all conjecture at the same time. Like we don't know how true any of this is, but just going on from what I know right now, they are a little reaction, and they're just trying to win the public's attention because of the reception of the DCEU so far, besides Wonder Woman. And they don't really need to try that hard. Just keep doing what they were doing, like heading towards that head in the direction that you're going on originally, and I think they'd be okay. They don't need to keep like doing like Joker movie, Nightwing movie, Joker and Harley Quinn movie. So it's like they don't need to do all these billions of movies. Just kind of keep it in a straight line. You don't need to keep doing all these different things just to appeal to the fans who don't like the DCEU. Just like if they don't like it, they're not gonna like it no matter what. Like that's how I feel. Like there's a lot of people and notice like who don't like Wonder Woman, and it's like that's okay, whatever. Like a lot of people did like Wonder Woman, and that's also great. But like one movie isn't gonna win everyone back who didn't like those other movies. So like, like I don't care. Like that's why like I don't want WB to keep pandering to the people who didn't like the movies. Like they just focus on those movies and those movies alone, and don't worry about the rest. Yeah,
I agree that it reflects their focus, which is a concern. Like they only you only have so much money to spread around on these films, and if you're focused on producing the maximum number of merchandise selling Joker and Harley Quinn vehicles, then we know what your focus is, and it's not making the movies that we'd like to see. It's pushing back those movies, or maybe abandoning those movies altogether. And there's a timeline on that because those movies are already cast. Like we already have those people, and I wouldn't ask. Like Amy Adams is a big fucking deal.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. I'm not gonna ask her to sit around and wait to see what they're gonna do with Lois. She's got to work. Henry's got the time to work right now, but is he going to be available in the future? I mean, he might blow up. It's entirely possible he's going to blow up. He's in a freaking Mission Impossible movie. Like, we don't know. So I think if they're not willing to lock down those people, like, that's more dangerous. Like, that's something that puts things in jeopardy. And I think that's something, in terms of, like, I think that the focus is seems like it's skewed.
Yep.
And for me,
agreed.
Again, it's just you're right, and they don't need to like completely cast all these movies. Like you can you have your Superman, you have your key players, use them. Mm-hmm. Like, and I imagine there are people, even if Zack doesn't end up directing a Man of Steel sequel, there are people lined up who probably would want to do these movies who are probably very talented people.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I don't understand why Warner Brothers is so like trigger shy about doing another Man of Steel movie or some of these other movies. Like it's weird to me that they keep shifting their focus on the things that people aren't necessarily asking for.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. That's just me.
I think it's a frustrating position. I think that I think it's a very habitual position for Superman fans to inhabit lately. It's a very frustrating thing where I don't think that DC has understood the appeal of the character for some time now. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that affects the way that they make big decisions about his character. Mm-hmm. And that kind of sucks because somehow an amazing kind of art film slipped through their notice. It's not something that I ever expected Warner Brothers to ever do with the character. And it's just kind of opened this avenue of thirst for these really great Superman stories, and now we're not really sure that we're going to get them because Warner Brothers just keeps waffling on it. And that's... I'm concerned that that's just a return to status quo, and that, is sad. It's a loss.
Yeah, I know, and especially because, like, I think at least for most of us, like, Man of Steel and Henry Cavill Superman are some of our favorite parts of the DCEU, and we're all kind of afraid of losing that. And at least if they don't end up making a Man of Steel sequel and we just get Superman and Justice League, that's okay. At least we could say we got a Zack Snyder Superman story arc within this trilogy of Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and Justice League. You know, at least we could say that like the character did get something, at least for us. You know.
Oh, when I was teaching Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey the other day, and we are literally still 110% on track for the journey. It's just taking 3 movies, and I think that's really fascinating. And my students didn't care, but I talked about it for a very long time.
That's totally fascinating. I want to take your class. I would care a lot.
And my students were like, "How is this relevant to The Lion King?" And I was like, "Oh God, it's not. It's not at all."
Oy.
That's great.
They all love the Lion. It's weird. It's a generational thing or something. Like this age group, they're just totally like every single one of them will go to bat for The Lion King. Like I bring up Simba, and all of a sudden I have all their attention.
Like The Lion King rocks, and I love that one.
It's great. It's a great story.
I admit,
it's Hamlet though. Shakespeare has no respect for the hero's journey.
I happen to like The Lion King.
I mean, but that's the thing though, is that I brought it up as a really good example of a great narrative that doesn't follow the hero's journey, and how that is good and an important thing that we need to, like, you know, in terms of moving forward and not stagnating in the way that we tell our narratives, because they can't all be the same. But, you know, when I'm talking about the hero's journey, I'm like, we really just can't talk. Like, we really just, Simba's going to confuse you guys, because Hamlet is a really atypical hero. Like, he spends half of the movie just being like, is there any way I can not act? Can we find a way that I can just not do anything? I mean, because he's a depressed character. That's his MO. It's important.
Then when he does do things, it's like, oh wow, you just made all the wrong choices perfectly.
All of them.
Well done, sir. You know, it was like,
and
I
still
think
a wonderful and lovable, likable, relatable character.
Oh,
Very
yeah.
strange.
You
no idea how he pulled that off.
He's all of us. We're all like, yep, that's me. Going, okay, I don't want to act. I don't want to get crazy. I don't want to get nuts. I don't want to. Oh, and go. And then we do it all wrong, you know. So.
But yeah, I think, like, you know, part of, and this is what I've been arguing, is that part of the reason that everyone's so pissed off about Batman versus Superman is because we ended at the part of the hero's journey right before, like, the reward and the atonement. So the audience, by extension, doesn't get any reward, and I think this is a big part of why I was so angry after I watched Batman vs Superman for the first time. I left the movie theater and, like, yelled in the parking lot for like 20 minutes, I was just outraged by my experience, and we kind of got abandoned. Like, Death of Superman does that to you. Death of Superman just obliterates a hero, and then it's like, oh well, now the world is empty, and nothing you do matters, and everything's shit. And you're like, wait, that's not the moral I wanted. What are you trying to do?
That's not the moral we got, though. Or, like, that's not what I got. I hated seeing him die. I hated watching him die, but I completely understood it.
Feeling.
I completely understood it. And the fact that they showed all the candles and everything, I was like, oh, thank God, his sacrifice actually
meant something.
Got something. Yeah, it meant something. Did something. The people are going, whoa, wait a minute. We got this wrong, and let's fix it. And I was like, oh, thank God, because you're right. Otherwise, it's just like, wow, look, you took a good thing and you ruined it. This is why we can't have nice superheroes, you know. So.
And then it's like honestly, like I figured at some point, like when we knew that Doomsday was going to be a part of the story, like I'm like, I really hope they don't kill Superman. And then like, as soon as that moment comes where Clark tells Lois, "I love you," I'm like, he's dead.
Yeah. That's the way in which I'm a mess, because I absolutely did not think that Zack Snyder had the audacity to kill Superman in his second Superman movie.
I was
110% sure. I was lecturing people online, I'm pretty sure, right before the movie. Like, he's not going to kill Superman. That's dumb. It's not time to kill Superman. It's, like, way too early. I admit he introduced Doomsday. He'll probably eventually kill Superman. I'm very excited for that. But he's not going to kill Superman. Chill out. So when it happened to me in real time, and I went through all the stages of grief, but like the one I tripped over was denial, because I was literally looking at Superman's corpse going, okay, now what? What's next? Because like, Superman's not dead. That's stupid. What are we doing? And my reaction was so weird and organic. Like, I don't even it was bizarre. Like, I spent like a month afterward trying to figure out what happened to me in that movie the first time around. The second time I had a much more positive experience, but the first time it was way too organic for me.
I honestly cried a little bit when I saw it, because I'm like, at that time, like, at the same time, like, I was in denial. I'm like, no, they aren't doing this. And I'm like, by the end of it, I'm like, he's got to wake up. He's got to wake up. He's got to wake up.
Did that.
Wow, I must be like, I don't know. I must be a sucker for a good death, because I was like, gosh dang it, I don't want to see that happen, but it makes total sense.
God, I know. But at least that'll make his return in Justice League that much more special too.
Yeah.
Crap. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm waiting to see people's reaction to that, to him coming back, though. That'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's.
I
might cry a little.
It might happen. I mean, I'll try not to. I don't want to embarrass people I'm there with, but at the same time, I might be that person.
Like, I think this is gonna be.
In front of me being like, ah, you know. Yeah, this would be good.
I think this is going to be a make or break movie, really. I think this is going to be the movie where we figure out who is in the fandom and who's just never going to get on board with the DCEU. That's how I feel. I feel like this is it, because this is the literal end of the story. This is the story we were meant to tell. And if they don't like that story, then this probably isn't for them.
Exactly. And I agree. This has been pushing, like, so often. Something gets started, and people go, okay, and then it keeps going, and they go, what the heck are you doing, man? This is totally wrong. And then you give them the end, and they go, oh, I see where you were going. Or they get to the end and go, well, I see where you're going, but I hate it. And so, it's one or the other. And this is truly, you're right, I realized a while ago, especially with the Justice League trailers, it was like, oh, thank goodness, this is basically a Superman trilogy we're getting given. Given to us, with all these other awesome characters and a couple extra movies in between and stuff. But the bottom line is, Zack's movies, Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League, this is a Superman trilogy. Yep. This is what we're being given. This is his definitive view on Superman and how he feels about the character. So,
and I love
I think a lot of us, because we love it, have clued into, okay, I get what he's doing, and I'm here for it. And a lot of people haven't. So this last step is going to be some people going, oh, well,
And the
now I
thing
got to
is
go
that-
back and see it again, and maybe I'll like it better. And then there'll be other people that are like, yep, I still don't like this version. But this is the Superman trilogy. It's just not called Superman 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think-
And so,
and
yeah, it's beautiful. Beautiful.
Mhm.
I love this
Well,
trilogy.
And I think I understand that perspective. Like, I think I understand that perspective more than any of the other perspectives that have been shared, that have been dissenting, because it takes a lot of trust in Snyder. You have to trust him as a storyteller. You have to give him the benefit of the doubt. You have to be very invested in his vision. And I don't think that I necessarily expect that of any audience member. I think it's a very high calling for an audience member, especially someone who's casual, especially who's not someone who doesn't come to the table with an investment in these characters. I think that once we have the whole story out, once we have the entire trilogy, I think that it will be much easier for audiences to put their trust in the first two movies, knowing where we're going.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
good point.
completely agree with that. Completely. And it's sad that we are at that point where they have to get the entire product before they will trust, but at the same
Oh,
time,
it's so sad.
it is. But
Mhm.
I agree that once they get the entire thing, you look at it with new eyes and go, okay, this is the entire story, and then you can
Well,
give
and
a
I
lot
think the
more.
justification for that is that we have an audience that's so oft been fucked over.
Yeah, this is true. This is true.
I can't blame them, because like we have been screwed a lot, and being, and getting that letdown, like that's hard. Like I remember the first couple times that a movie tragically and completely let me down based on my expectations, and
Yeah.
like I was super pissed too, and I talked about it for a couple months too. I didn't talk about it for
Yeah.
a year because I'm not one of these guys, but whatever you've got to do, that's your process. Like, but that point of view, I kind of understand. I kind of get that.
I do understand that.
People have a hard time investing their trust in Snyder, kind of sight unseen. Like, we know that he did a really good job with The Watchmen, but I don't think that based on The Watchmen, I would trust him on a feminist level. So I think that the feminists who are kind of like, we'll see, have a really good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So a lot of perspectives.
That's really interesting.
Perspectives, I can see where they're coming from.
Yeah. I think I'm just putting together. Oh, self-realization. I think for a long time I've gone into things with little to no expectations for that exact reason, so I don't get screwed over and disappointed, because it happened so much when I was younger that I just decided, I'm so done with this. And it still happens sometimes when I don't even realize I'm doing it, but I'm doing it, and then I get let down, and then later I look back and I'm like, what happened? I was so into that. And I pinpoint the one spot where it completely let me down, and then I'm like, and then for some reason I don't sit and complain about it too much. I think I do, but I also just kind of drop it entirely. It's like, well, I guess that's enough of that, and you move on and find something else, So interesting, very interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I think my trust in Zack comes specifically from, like, I watched Man of Steel, and it was like, wow, this moves me. I love it. And then I had my doubts with Batman v Superman because of the comic it was based on, and I was like, oh gosh, I just don't know. But going to that, it was so rewarding in every way for me. It worked.
Absolutely.
Like even his death worked. Everything about it worked for me. It all resonated and hit home, and I was like, holy crap, this is exactly what a Superman story should be. And so that won my trust like 100%. And so now I'm going, Joss better not screw up Zack's movie, because, I have like total trust in Zack. I have no problems at all trusting in Zack to deliver me the final part of this trilogy and do it right, and to do it in a way that fits the first two installments. I just don't trust Joss. I'm like, please, I'm not too panicked, but at the same time, that little niggle in the back of my head is like, if I don't like it, I swear it's going to be because Joss messed it up. So I guess I'm the opposite of all those fans who just want to say that he, is the one that made it good. But that's the only doubt I have on this movie. That is the only doubt I have. If Joss had never been involved, I would have no doubt whatsoever. I'd say, no, I'm going to go see this movie, and it's going to blow me away, and I'm going to love it. Yeah. So, I don't know.
Well, I think that's a quirk of storytelling. I think that that you have to build confidence in your audience. You have to build trust in your audience, and I don't think that process is the same for everyone. Like for me, if I'm reading a novel and the first couple pages have a beautiful, well described, complete, and flawless image, that author has my trust. That's not something that for most people is really something that builds trust. So like you have to go at it from different directions, and you're gonna miss some people. And I think that a lot of people are missed by Zach's movies, because they whatever they need to trust him isn't there yet. And that's fine. I think that for me,
may never be there.
The strength. I mean, like Man of Steel literally played directly into everything that I wanted in a Superman movie, and it felt like such an event, and it felt like this weirdest like thing that happened where it was a bunch of us psychically sent Zach the layout for this film, and it was just exactly what the franchise needed, in my opinion. I think that built a lot of trust for me. But then, I think the same thing, Batman vs. Superman was such a payoff and had so many things that we were aching for. I think the people who have less trust in him sometimes have good reasons, and I think the people who have trust in him, I totally understand us, because he's earned it, like, in a lot of ways.
He has. And unfortunately, like, art is art, and it's subjective, so everybody takes it differently. Everybody interprets it differently. Everybody, has different needs and desires for what they want from it. And so, unfortunately, like, some people who Zach hasn't earned their trust, he will probably never earn it, simply because of the kind of storyteller he is. And that's okay. That's like saying, I don't really enjoy this author, They're not my thing. That's okay, because they just don't speak to you, and that's all right. And that's just the way it is. And I think Zach, to a degree, hits a smaller demographic than other primary storytellers in the business, because the primary storytellers spend a lot more time, I think, kind of just making it a broad mass appeal. And Zach makes it very personal to himself. And so the people that resonates with are people who can get that. It somehow hits them at the right level, and other people it just does not. And so he will never be universally loved. He will never be universally acclaimed. But I really have amazing, trust in him, just my personal experience, and respect for a man who is like, I'm an artist and this is what I do, and I'm not going to compromise or back down just to go mass appeal because, people don't like it, always, like, do you know how many artists we studied in grade school? We did this whole art unit, and they were like, and also this person was not appreciated in his time. Like, what I mean? Picasso, people thought his art was stupid and, ugly, like, it's just the way it is often when you're at the front lines of the change in an artistic movement. That's just the way it is. And so I have great hope that over time, as we move, hopefully, further into an era that he is kind of frontlined, that people will look back and go, wow, that guy was amazing, But he will never be universally loved. It's okay.
I think that's why this narrative is so damaging, because nerds can sort of get in this rut where they just sort of decide what the truth is, and then that truth becomes eternal, and nobody re-examines that truth.
Yeah.
And I think that is why the narrative worries me so much, is because I do think over time these movies are going to be revealed as the really like game-changing epics that they are, and the fact that, like, very obviously Man of Steel made it possible for Logan to happen, and things like that are going to be more obvious in the long run, but I don't know if the nerd subculture will ever catch up with that, because we have this weird narrative building thing where we all sit around and go, okay, this is the truth because XYZ nerd decided it was the truth. It's canon now, and canon is law.
Yeah. We as a little tiny microcosm society of fandom, we kind of shoot ourselves in the foot doing that, but we do it all the time, and we seem to repeat the same cycle over and over again. I don't think that it's anything we can truly escape from. So all we got to do is just inhabit our little corner and do it the best we can, and that's all we can do.
Just get put in the ground yelling Man of Steel was a really great movie.
Heck, yes.
Lower me down.
There was like a video that ran its way around Twitter. I don't even know where it was. I'm not even sure where I saw it, but some guy stood up. He was wearing a Wonder Woman costume, which really freaked me out. But,
oh, yes.
And he was like, Batman vs. Superman, it was a good movie. And the crowd cheers. And he's like, now just admit it was a good movie. All you guys come and carry me because this movie was great. And he laid down and they carried him across the crowd. And I was like, what the heck, where is this? Because I need to go to that. You're right. I'll be in the ground yelling this, and then some guy off to the side tried to do it with a different movie, and they dropped him, and then I laughed because it was oh good, these are my pieces of I swear of the fandom. So, but yeah, I'll have to go find that now.
Yeah.
Anyway, go on.
All right. So unfortunately, it looks like I gotta get going, guys. I gotta get ready for work here in a second. But I'm glad we were able to do this. This is probably our longest episode since the Comic-Con trailer breakdown. But,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but again, thanks guys for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate it as always. I love the topic this week as well as just the overall rambling we do. But
it's fun.
No, but I just love being able to talk with you guys. Again, it's always great. And again, thank you guys for always doing this with me. I'm always going to appreciate you guys taking the time to do this.
Yeah. Thanks.
You have a great time.
It's always a pleasure.
Yes.
Alright, so with that being said, that's probably going to be it from my end. So maybe if you guys want to go around and reintroduce yourselves to everyone who's listening.
Okay, so I'm Lily from Lily Loves Comics on Tumblr.
I'm Danielle. I'm a Social Justice League on Tumblr.
I'm Katie. I'm a Story Advocate on Tumblr.
My name is Artem, Great Kung Lao on Tumblr.
And of course, you guys can find me at True Man of Steel on Tumblr, Nerdy Nick here on YouTube. Or you can look up True Man of Steel on Twitter, because I just changed my app there. So now I'm True Man of Steel on Twitter and Tumblr. Thank you guys for listening. Go ahead and follow these people. If you guys have a Tumblr, follow these people. They're always awesome, posting stuff on their Tumblrs about the DCEU. They're always great. They're reblogging metas, posting metas. They're great people to follow. Definitely check their blogs out. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for joining me. It's always great, as always. And I'll talk to you guys next time. All right, and to everyone listening, thanks again for taking the time to listen. I always appreciate you guys listening and giving us your input on the podcast. It's always greatly appreciated on my end. Thank you so much. Share this podcast. Let everyone know about it who likes the DCEU or is fans of the DCEU. And yeah, just keep this podcast going, and we'll just see how it goes from there. Thank you so much for everyone for listening. And until next time, have a good one.